Often you have to kind of look around at your life and look at the people who are succeeding in what you want to do. And you have to say to yourself, I want to find out how the best in the world get to be great, and then I want to model that so I could at least taste greatness as quickly as possible. I have a methodology behind investing. My number one rule is someone smarter than me has to be investing alongside of me. It works because venture capitalists will always say, oh, 9 out of 10 companies will fail. Nope, this strategy works extremely well.
Investments are riddled with hidden fees, hidden commissions, non-performing fees, and if you can discover where those are, you can boost your returns substantially. So let's say that you have an underperforming asset, like a certificate of deposit or a bond or something like that. And then you have a loan that you're paying more interest than what you're earning. Why not cash that thing out, pay it off, and it's a guaranteed return? Or you can restructure the loan, right? If you have collateral like a car, you could refinance a car and pay off other loans that might be double that interest rate, and all of a sudden car loan improves your credit score. An improved credit score might allow you to refinance a mortgage, and refinance that mortgage in today's interest rate environments will save you a boatload of cash. So you can restructure, you could reallocate, or you could renegotiate. All loans negotiable, and if you know how to have that conversation, you can lower the interest rate.
Hi there. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Patrick Gentempo, and welcome to episode 4 of Wealth Breakthroughs. I don't even know where to begin to introduce James Altucher. He has one of the most famous podcasts on earth. He's a best-selling author. He's made fortunes in the hedge fund world and also become one of the leading tech commentators and crypto experts around. He's also remarkably humble, honest, and has a self-deprecating sense of humor like few other people I've ever met. Today, he's going to show you the lessons he learned from losing millions of dollars and how those lessons helped him make many millions more. He also used one simple, easy to grasp strategy he says took him from near homelessness to phenomenal success that changed his life. Get ready for the most unique wealth breakthrough you've seen so far. Here's James Altucher. James, thanks so much for doing this. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Thanks for having me on this show. I'm really pleased and honored that you thought of me for this.
Well, what's interesting is trying to consider, okay, where are we going to go here? There's a lot of places we could go with you that you could speak to. But let's just first start with your background. What led you to doing what you're doing today?
I'm doing a lot of things today. So I'm a big believer that, everyone always tells you, be focused, stay in your lane. I think that's horrible advice, and I think that works in the self-help world, but doesn't work in the real world, where I think there's a big difference. I think it's important to explore and experiment, not only ways to approach a career, but ways to approach a life. So what am I doing today? I love to write. I've been writing every day for 30 years. I do a podcast. I have been an entrepreneur. I've been an investor. I've been an advisor and board member of many companies ranging from $0 in revenues to $1 billion in revenues. The $1 billion in revenues went to zero. The zero went to $1 billion. So it's funny how that works out. But I kind of came through this in a very different way than usual. I wasn't very interested in being an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurship is brutal and hard and often painful, at least for me. I wasn't a natural. I was natural at being creative and helping other people. I wasn't natural at managing people or figuring out the accounting or profit margins or things like that. I had no business background. I was a computer scientist, and then I got kicked out of graduate school because I wanted to write a novel. So every day I was writing fiction, and finally they wrote me a letter, and they said, when you're mature enough, we really like you, but we can't let you sit here on a fellowship. Please leave tomorrow. And when you're mature enough, you can come back. That was in 1991. They do occasionally ask me if I want to come back. It's about almost 28 years later, and I haven't come back yet.
What were you in grad school for?
Computer science.
Computer science.
Yeah, I was very interested in artificial intelligence, computer science. One of my projects I was working on, I went to graduate school where the computer that eventually became Deep Blue was the computer that beat the world chess champion, Garry Kasparov, many years later, 7 years later. And I was working on that. IBM actually had offered me a job to continue with the team to work on it. So IBM essentially bought the team, of which I was partially on, and asked us all to go to IBM. I said no. I was one person who said no, but I enjoyed working on it. But then I switched interests. Again, I believe in exploring what, you have this inner compass, and at different points, the compass changes direction, and you should follow it. Like, I wasn't going to spend the next 5 years in graduate school if what I was really interested in was doing something completely useless that would never make me a dime of money. And that's all I did for years and years afterwards. So finally, I got a job at HBO. You don't mind me going into all this background, do you?
No, but I'm a little curious and confused. Computer science, novelist. Normally those are two very different dispositions or different types of minds and people. So how is it that these two things were coexisting in your life? Did you feel sort of schizoid, or were you just losing interest in computer science?
I wouldn't say I was losing interest in computer science, but I would say often you have to kind of look around at your life and look at the people who are succeeding in what you want to do. And you have to say to yourself, do I want to be like them when I grow up? And I still do this. I'm 51. I still look around and say, do I want to be like this person when I grow up? And I looked at my professors. I wasn't that excited by the work they were doing. I still loved computers and so on. But then I just loved reading and writing. The thing they teach you in first grade, I really wanted to do it for a living. And I would just not go to school anymore. I stopped going to classes, and I would read for 3 or 4 hours every morning, and then I'd probably write for a good 6 to 8 hours in the afternoon and evening.
Wow.
I did an experiment for a while just because I wanted to kind of balance social life but also have good quality, very quiet writing time. Mm-hmm. And I still wanted to sleep 8 hours a day. So here's what I did. I slept from 4 to 8 in the afternoon and 4 to 8 in the morning. So from 8 in the evening till midnight, I would go to dinner and hang out with my friends. And then from midnight to 4 in the morning, I would be able to write. Then 4 to 8 in the morning, I would sleep. And then I would read until, whenever. And then I'd sleep again, and the cycle would all start.
Did it work?
Yeah, it was great. And then I was always experimenting with sleeping. Another time, I decided I'm gonna have a 25-hour day. So I'll miss a day every 25 days, but I'll have an extra hour every day to work. So I would just basically stay awake. I'd sleep 8 hours a day, but stay awake another hour. So eventually, I'm sleeping from, first I'm sleeping from, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., but then gradually, a few weeks later, I'm sleeping from noon to 8 p.m., and I just push it back an hour each day. So that was another experiment.
How'd that one work out?
Not as well. Not as well. I would get tired. But I did that for many years, and I kind of went through that phase where I thought I was great when actually I was awful. But fortunately, I was hiding in plain sight. I was just writing and not really showing it to anybody. And I wrote, during that period, I wrote 4 novels and dozens of short stories. All of them awful, like the worst things possible. But during that time, of course, I got thrown out of graduate school. I had failed all my classes. I got thrown out of graduate school. Still good enough that IBM offered me a job, despite being thrown out, to work on this amazing project, which became the first chess computer to beat the world chess champion. It kind of was the dream of AI since the 1950s.
Are you a chess player?
I'm a chess master, yes.
Yeah, wow.
And I say that not in a bragging way. There's people much stronger than me, including Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion, who lives around the corner from me now, but 20 years ago, I had helped build the computer that beat him. But instead of taking this amazing job that would have been also a lifelong dream, I decided, I'm going to get thrown out of graduate school and write horrible novels instead. And they said I could come back whenever I wanted, but I never did. In fact, the dean that threw me out of graduate school is now one of my closest friends. He's my only friend left from graduate school, the actual guy who threw me out. But a few years later, I decided, you know what? I can't do this forever. I applied for a job at HBO, and I had no experience in the entertainment industry. I had only worked as a computer programmer to make money. So I had after going to undergrad for computer science and grad school for computer science, I had the lowliest job. I was a junior analyst programmer was my title at HBO. And just to mention, I do really believe in this idea of follow your compass. Mm-hmm. So at the same time, I had 2 job offers. One was at JP Morgan, and the salary was $80,000 a year. The other was at HBO in New York. Both were in New York City. HBO for $40,000 a year. I took the HBO job.
Why?
I hate banks. I love television. I'm not going to take.
That's simple.
Yeah, it's that simple. I never even thought twice about it. I never even considered. But here's what happened. I'm at HBO for a few days. I basically crash everything I touch. And finally, my boss walks into my cubicle, so all the other 8 attached cubicles, they're all listening. Mm-hmm. And he says, "You're not doing well here. It's not working out for you, but we don't want you to fail." Just, of course, I'm horrified. I'm the new guy. Everybody's listening in the cubicles around me. It's so embarrassing. He had no clue how embarrassing it was. And he said, "We're going to have to send you to remedial programming classes." I was an undergraduate major at one of the best computer science departments, and then I went to again. I had put in 10,000 hours programming already, but it just goes to show you, education gets you, being in a classroom gets you good at being in a classroom, right, but does not get you good at the real world. And so I was great at programming for the classroom, but I had no computer skills. So I go to these remedial classes. Finally, I get back to HBO and really begin my first real serious job. I didn't want to start a business at that time, but nor did I want to do what my bosses told me to do. Right. So I was very interested in the internet. The internet was this new thing. This was 1994. And I'd said to HBO was trying to do interactive TV at the time, and through cable lines. And I said to my boss, "Why don't you use... There's this brand new thing, the web, on top of the internet. Here's this browser, Netscape. It's slow, but you could potentially stream video. Mm-hmm. Why don't we try that?" And he was like, James, the internet is for academics. Why don't you let the cable guys do what they're good at? You just do what they tell you to do." Mm-hmm. And so there was one weekend where no one was around, and I completely wired up HBO for the web. I installed Netscape on every single computer, and I took every database at HBO and figured out how to put it on, an intranet. They didn't even have the word intranet then. An intranet. So I had everything from the employee database to HBO has a movie database that's kind of like IMDb, where you click on a movie star, you click on Alec Baldwin, and you see all the movies he's been in. You click on a movie, you see all the stars of it, and so on. You could click on their deals potentially, and they even had their cafeteria menu online. So I put everything online, and when everybody got back Monday, I showed everybody, and they were terrified because I had basically re-implemented in a weekend all of the projects they were hand building, or without a web browser. And so, but it actually got very popular, and then all of Time Warner wanted to do it. So I was advising almost all the different divisions of Time Warner. I remember at one point, Comedy Central, which Time Warner, HBO owns half of, they called me over and they said, "Look, we'll pay you as a consultant, even though you're an employee at HBO, we'll pay you as a consultant. Can you give us an intranet?" And I said to them, "I don't want to get paid. I only want to do it if you give me the 3 a.m. time slot. You only put infomercials there right now. Just give me the 3 a.m. time slot. And they're like, this woman who's the head of IT, what are you going to do with it? And I said, I just want to walk around at 3 in the morning and interview people for the 3 a.m. time slot on Comedy Central. And then I'll build your intranet for you. So to her credit, she took it all the way up to the CEO of Comedy Central, Doug Herzog, who later became the CEO of MTV. He said no correctly. And I didn't do an intranet for them, but I realized, okay, well, every company in New York City needs a website, and they don't even know it yet. And there's maybe 5 people in New York City who know how to build a website. So at the same time, my brother-in-law contacts me. His business is falling apart. What did he do? He made CD-ROMs for a living, which don't exist anymore. There's a reason his business fell apart or was falling apart. And I said, why don't you try this thing? I'll show you this thing called the web. So he was a good designer. He's designing for the web. And I showed him some of the software stuff. But he still couldn't, he didn't speak English. He was French, and French people never learn English. He was here for 20 years already, but he still didn't speak English. And he certainly didn't write English. So he's like, can you help me write proposals? Okay, I said, okay. So suddenly now I'm a full-time employee at HBO, but I'm writing. I said, I don't want to be part of your business. I'm not interested in that. I want to eventually make a TV show for HBO. But then HBO said to me, look, you made this intranet. Why don't you be in charge of HBO.com? We need a website. So I said, okay. But I said, let's outsource it to a good company that makes it. So I did competitive bidding. 4 or 5 companies, the only 4 or 5 companies in the city, bid to do the website. I picked one company that was the cheapest and the best. So I called him up to inform him, my brother-in-law, where I had written the proposal to me, you got the deal. And then I eventually left HBO and joined the company full-time. And actually, we were partners in it, and I was in charge of it. And we built up a very big company building websites. We built AmericanExpress.com, TimeWarner.com, ConEdison.com, all the movie studios, and maybe you could tell by the way I look, we built every gangster rap record label website. So Loud Records, Bad Boy Records, Death Row Records, Interscope, Jive. We built all the websites for all their labels, and we built up a nice company. We had this niche in the entertainment industry. And so eventually, like all of these companies, we got acquired. And we got acquired by a public company. Stock went way up. I sold every last dime. I said, this is going to be a bubble of stocks. It's eventually, the internet's here to stay. The internet's not in a bubble, but Wall Street seems to be going crazy. All these money people are going crazy. So I sold everything.
What year was that about?
This is 1999.
Wow.
I sold in 1998, started in 1995, sold it in 1998, cashed out in 1999, really at a good time. And then after making 10 good decisions in a row, I said, you know what? This internet thing is here to stay. I'm just going to invest it all back into internet companies.
Oh, no.
But it'll be diversified. It'll be a lot of internet companies, which was not diversification. I didn't know that then. And within 8 months, I lost $15 million, and I was broke. I was dead broke. I remember one time I went to my ATM machine, and I accidentally saw how much was left in the account. I was so depressed and so horrified by my actions that I had refused to look at my bank account whenever I logged on. But this one ATM said, $143 left. And that same account had over $15 million 8 months earlier.
You went from 15 million to 143 in 8 months.
Yeah, I just said that.
Yeah, I know.
But I didn't really need to be reminded. I don't need to be reminded of it that much.
Well, I want to bring you back there because what were you thinking at that point?
I was suicidal. I was really depressed. I thought to myself, I'm not a businessman. I'm not an entrepreneur. I somehow won a lottery ticket in the biggest crazy boom ever, and I'm never going to have this opportunity again. I had generations of savings for my children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. I had bought my parents a house.
So you're literally depressed and suicidal. You had all these maybe self-impressions about, I'm not a good businessman, I'm not a good entrepreneur.
But I already knew in advance.
Yeah.
I really did not enjoy entrepreneurship or being a businessman. But I was very good. I had 2 things going for me. I was passionate about what I was selling. So I really believed that every company not only was going to have a website, but they needed a website. So I really can go into any business and explain to them why. And I had the skills to prove it. Like I could make them a website faster and cheaper than any other company in town. And there were 4 companies and mine in town. But I didn't like managing people. I didn't really understand it. So we had a lot of employees, but I tended to do everything myself. I didn't really know how to when people were bickering or fighting, or if 2 employees were having sex with each other. I didn't really know like how to manage these things. It was just my brother-in-law and me like kind of locked in our room doing most of the work, and I would do 100% of the sales. And so because I was so passionate about this and what the future was, and how I could help them, and brainstorming ideas for what American Express could do, what HBO could do. So for instance, for HBO, and again, I'd worked there, but they became the biggest client of my business. For HBO, I said to them, you do such a great job making original TV shows. You're the first cable company to really create these amazing original TV shows. The web is this brand new entertainment medium. No one knew what the web was really going to turn into be. And so I said, the web is this brand new entertainment medium. Why don't we do original web shows? So they said, sure. And so this was probably the first web show made for the internet. It is on HBO.com. I called it 3 a.m. It was based on my experience at Comedy Central because I pitched for them to do the 3 a.m. spot. So I did this for about almost 4 years. At 3 in the morning every Tuesday night, I would go out in New York City. And if you were out, I'll just ask you specifically, if you were out at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday night, probably something good was not happening.
Right.
Right? Like, so that was always the case. I'd go, not a Saturday night because everyone's having a party, whatever, but a Tuesday night, why aren't you asleep? Why aren't you getting ready for school? Why aren't you getting ready for work?
Right.
Something wrong was happening.
Right.
And so I did this for 4 years almost, interviewing people at 3 in the morning. And then I would get the transcript, we would do design around it, and put 4 interviews a week from 1996 through 1999 on HBO.com. And I really loved doing it. And I suppose that was like, in a weird way, the first podcast in a sense. So we were always doing creative things for every company, and I enjoyed that part. But I didn't enjoy clients, because clients will call me up also at 3 in the morning and tell me their problems and their issues, and I just didn't enjoy it. And so I sold the company as fast as I could. But I didn't really, there's a lot of subtleties to valuing and selling a business. People think, oh, you build something and then somebody offers you a ton of money and you say yes, and that's that. But that's not how it works. So entrepreneurship is building a company and learning how to get profitable or raise money or whatever. We were always very profitable. So perhaps that was a mistake. Maybe I should have raised money to build something much bigger and lose money in the process, because those companies were getting sold for much bigger amounts, because then you're selling the dream as opposed to selling a profitable income stream. But the big mistake I made was I thought it was so good that we were profitable. What I should have done was I should have said, you know what, I'm a software guy. I can make software products to help people build websites. So secretly, I was making software to help me quickly build websites. So AmericanExpress.com was like 60,000 pages. And so I built software to help me quickly generate 60,000 pages and have communication between all the employees of American Express to help me analyze the new site and where to troubleshoot. And I had all these products I was developing. I didn't tell anyone because I didn't want them to think we weren't working that many hours, so they would pay us less. American Express paid us $250,000 when I had $0 in the bank. They were one of our first big clients, and we were looking at each other. They're going to pay us $250,000 to do this website. So I wrote software to build the website. We built the website in a day, but didn't tell them. And what I should have done if I was a smart business guy was say, this is a product, we're selling you a product. And I should have been a product company. When you're a service company, the saying is all your assets go out the door when the light, at the end of the day, because it's the people are your assets. When you're a product company, you make money while you sleep. And it's worth a lot more. It's worth $100 million instead of $6 million. And I didn't understand anything about business, about valuation, about how Wall Street values companies, because that's ultimately, at the end of the day, that's how they're going to value your company. I didn't understand how to build long-term relationships with clients. So I was not really, this is my very first business. I had no business experience at all. I didn't study business. I've been writing fiction for years, and before that, a computer programmer. Before that, a nerdy chess player. I had a lot of girlfriends in high school, obviously. And, then we sold the business. Stock went up, so I did sell out with a decent amount. But then, again, like I said, I lost everything in a very short period because I didn't know any. There's 3 skills: making money, keeping money, growing money. So I made money, but I didn't know that there was these other skills called keeping money and growing money. Right. And even making money, I was okay at it, but not great. Mm-hmm. And you could say I was great, but I could say I could have been much better if I knew a little bit more about business. So like I said, I thought I had won the lottery, and this is never going to happen again. And I don't know anything. I'm never going to be able to do this again. And I just lost it all. And I had been spoiled. I didn't want to go back to a job. And not that I was too snobby for a job, but I was just depressed. And I had 2 little daughters. One was 3, the other was 0. Mm-hmm. And I said to myself, I was so horrified at what I had done. I was losing my house. So one of the things I had spent on is I had bought a big apartment in New York City and rebuilt it, not knowing what I was doing at all, even doing that. And I was going to lose my house. I owed money in taxes, and I had no money. Mm-hmm. So I thought, my mind always went to the worst case scenario of what was going to happen there. And I had these 2 babies. But I had one thing left, which is I had a life insurance policy that I had bought when I had money. Mm-hmm. So I figured, look, my 3-year-old and my 0-year-old, they're not going to remember me. Mm-hmm. Their mom, my ex-wife, will be able to remarry. And so I started Alta Vista-ing. That was the search engine, Alta Vista. I started Alta Vista-ing. What is the best way to kill yourself without hurting yourself? Because I didn't want to hurt myself. and also I had this life insurance policy, so I didn't want anybody to suspect that I killed myself, because then maybe I didn't know the rules. Maybe you couldn't get your life insurance policy. Turns out there's no way to do it. Both those things, hurting yourself or preventing people from finding out. So I didn't go through with that, but we lost the house. I kind of went into exile. I was so depressed I couldn't leave my room. We moved 70 miles away in the middle of a blizzard to this kind of sort of almost rural area, and I just had nothing to do. I had no jobs, no opportunities, no friends, because when you make a lot of money, everybody becomes your friend. When you lose it all, nobody's your friend anymore. And that applies to everybody you know. You don't know anybody once you lose all the money. So I really didn't know anybody. I had no opportunities, and I was just so depressed I couldn't leave my house. And so I figured, okay, my compass was starting to move again, and I figured I lost so much money investing. It's because I didn't know anything. I didn't do what I normally do when I study something. Like when I studied computers and the internet, I had a methodology for getting to be not only good, but among the best. Even when I was a kid and I started getting interested in a game, just a simple game like chess, I had a methodology for getting better. You divide a big skill into all the micro skills, and you take lessons from a really great coach, and you apply yourself in professional tournaments, and that's how you get good at a skill. That's kind of the basics of how you get good at a skill. Mm-hmm. So I did that with a game like chess. I did that with computers. I did that with understanding the internet, but I had never done that with investing for some reason. Mm-hmm. And so I read hundreds, and I'm not even exaggerating, I read hundreds of books on investing, and I still felt like I didn't quite grasp what was going on because I didn't understand the psychology. I almost had PTSD from losing all this money. So I would buy a stock, and if it moved for 1 second against me, I'd have a panic attack. So using my computer background, I wrote software I took 60 years of stock market data for every single stock, and I wrote software. I had an artificial intelligence background. I wrote software to sort of model the stock market, and taking what I learned from all the great investors of the past, I tried to model what they would think, but within software. And then I found all these patterns within the stock market. And so then I started trading slowly, bit by bit, with just the little money I had left. When we finally sold the house, had tiny bit of money left, not enough to survive, but enough to put in the market and try to make some money. And it worked. So I was trading every day, and the software was basically making money every single day. But now I didn't know any investors. I didn't know anybody in the investment community. I never worked on Wall Street. I didn't know anybody at any bank. So I wrote all these people, all these heroes of mine, new heroes who were investment gods. I wrote to each one of them and I said, hey, I'm a big fan. Can I buy you a cup of coffee and pick your brain? And I got 0 responses. It's not like somebody would say no. Nobody responded. It's not, what is going to happen? Is Warren Buffett going to suddenly say, Gladys, hold all calls. Someone named James Altucher is going to fly to Omaha, treat me to a 60-cent cup of coffee, and pick my brain of all the knowledge I've amassed over the past 60 years of investing. He's not going to do that. Nobody did that. So then I started thinking of something else. I started saying, well, I need to do something that's going to attract their attention. I need to be more creative. And so since 2002, I always carry around a waiter's pad. And every single day, and this is every single day since 2002, I write down 10 ideas a day. And the reason is, people always say ideas are a dime a dozen, execution is everything.
Uh-huh.
This also is the worst advice ever. Ideas are not a dime a dozen. A good idea is very hard. And the creativity is a muscle, just like any other muscle. If you got into an accident and you were in a hospital bed for 2 weeks, your leg muscles would atrophy. You would need physical therapy to walk again. And all of us were walking around all day long with our creativity muscles atrophied. So I started writing down 10 ideas a day. And it'd have to be the topic could vary. It could be 10 business ideas, 10 ideas for you, 10 ideas how Amazon could be better. So I started researching each person I wanted to meet, and I'd study them enough and study their business. I'd write 10 ideas for them. Mm-hmm. And so then I sent each one of the 20 an email again. Mm-hmm. I said, I don't need to meet you. Here's 10 ideas for your business. See you later. Enjoy. And of the 20 people, 3 people wrote back to me. One person I had sent literally 10 software programs. I said, I know, based on reading your PhD thesis, you're very much interested in this style of quantitative programming. So I wrote this software. I'll teach your employees how to use it or not, and good luck. Mm-hmm. Another person was not only a hedge fund manager, but a big writer about finance. Mm-hmm. And I said, here's 10 articles. If you wrote these articles, I would love to read them. You never have to contact me again. I think you would do a great job writing these articles. So I came up with 10 ideas for articles that he should write that were very unique kind of articles. Another person I also gave 10 ideas to, and those were the only 3 people who responded out of the 20. The first person, after a several month getting to know each other period, he invested money with me. So he became my first investor, and I started a hedge fund. And he was a professional hedge fund manager. So using the fact that he was a qualified hedge fund manager investing in me, I raised other money, and suddenly I was in the hedge fund business. Mm-hmm. With the other person who was a writer, he said, these ideas are great. I don't want to write them though. How about you write them? So he hired me to be a writer for his very popular website. It was TheStreet.com. It was Jim Cramer. Mm-hmm. And so suddenly I was a writer. Mm-hmm. And the third person, I figured, I've got these 2. I won't respond to him. But 12 years later, I hit reply on his email, and I said...
12 years?
12 years. So in 2014, this is 2002, I wrote these emails. 2014, I literally hit reply, and I said to him, he had written to me, okay, I'll meet you for lunch. I wrote to him, I replied in 2014, and I said, okay, but instead of lunch, do you want to come on my podcast? So that's when Nassim Taleb, author of many great books, came on my podcast. And I started a career in finance and investing after losing all my money investing. But at this point, I'd read hundreds of books. I had written all the software. And because I had no background in investing, it gave me a kind of a blank slate view. So instead of just studying, value investing or growth investing, I studied everything from merger arbitrage, convertible arbitrage, options trading, all the different styles of options trading, of course, value investing. I would read these huge books on accounting so I could read balance sheets from SEC filings. Like, I didn't know what I needed to know, so I would just try to learn everything. And I was so varied that then I started going on CNBC because they knew I could talk about any topic. If Microsoft had earnings, I could analyze them. If the Fed was raising interest rates, I could analyze what it meant historically. If housing was going into a bubble, I could compare it to, is this like the tulip bubble? I knew all the history of these things. I had even written software analyzing the price fluctuations of tulips from hundreds of years ago just to understand them a little better. And so I really became informed on investing. So then a publisher I reached out to, Wiley, was publishing a lot of finance books. So I started writing books for them. I basically shared all my software. I wanted the first book. Then I wrote a book about Warren Buffett, how he was much more of a day trader than people thought. I just wrote all these like crazy books about investing that were very offbeat. And, everything kind of cycled into each other. So more people would invest in the fund. I started writing for the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal. I became a spokesperson for Fidelity for a while. I started speaking for them at conferences. And I built this interesting career investing.
So let me ask some questions. So you obviously turned a weakness into a strength.
Yeah.
But there's a couple of questions I have with this story, which I find fascinating. First one is this. So you're depressed, right?
Yeah.
And you're suicidal. You just won the lottery and then lost all your winnings. And then you decide, okay, I have to go learn about this. And you're self-study, which seems to be, kind of your way all the time because...
It was all self-study. I knew nobody. I couldn't call anybody. There was no one to call. I didn't even know who would I call. I didn't know any other investors at all.
So what was the psychological inflection point, though? Because you're basically, you got reclused. You
Yes.
went away and got reclused. At what point did you finally say, was it just sheer survival motivation that got you to start moving again? Or
There was a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. I had children, and I was going, as far as I knew, I was going homeless. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen, so I was scared. And I'm not even exaggerating. Like, if every day you're in the fetal position crying for 12 hours a day, you're not going to be able to help your family.
Right.
And action crowds out depression. Mm-hmm. And so I started taking these walks. And one time I was walking past the Bowery in New York City, there's this whole strip of the Bowery, which is all these restaurant supply stores. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I just wandered into one of them. And I got fascinated with just the form factor, the design of a waiter's pad. I just loved it because you can't, by the way, everybody should get a waiter's pad, and I'll tell you why. Not only could you write 10 ideas a day down, and it's a good format for that because if you have a big notebook, there's too much incentive to write paragraphs. This is just bullet points, idea after idea after idea. You can't fit, you're not writing a novel on a waiter's pad. The other thing is, if I'm going, let's say I'm raising money as a hedge fund or even as a startup business. I go to a meeting, a conference room, everybody's coming in suits. They all pull out their, I don't know how you say it, the Moleskine notebooks. It's $500 notebooks they throw on the ground, and they're really expensive pens. And then I just throw out my waiter's pad on the table. And 100% of the time, I am not kidding, 100% of the time, one person in the room will say, I'll take fries with that burger. I don't know why they always came up with that. It was just, that was the joke every single time someone would make. And I would have different answers. But then they would say, why do you have a waiter's pad? And I would say, it's 10 cents a pad. I'm frugal. And so they know that even though I'm the one who just blew $15 million, they knew or I was frugal as opposed to all of them with their $500 notebooks and their suits and everything. So it was they felt for me. It was a conversation starter, and I became the center of the meeting, which was my goal because I was raising money. But then I bought 100 waiter's pads for $10 for some reason, and the next day I go out and I make my first list. I came up with a book idea, and I wrote 10 chapters for the book. And I got excited. For the first time in like a year, I was like excited. Like, I'm going to write this book. And the title was how to beat your friends at every game in the universe. Because when you go home for Thanksgiving, you're with your friends and your family, you eat your turkey, and then someone pulls out a Monopoly board or Scrabble or cards for poker or bridge or checkers or chess. And for every one of these games, I was like a games expert. So for every one of these games, I knew how to win with a shortcut. I'll give you an example. Scrabble, most people think you need a really good vocabulary. It's actually the worst way to win at Scrabble. It's very hard to have a very good vocabulary, good enough to win at Scrabble. But there's easier ways. If I just told you all of the 2-letter words, you would beat all of your friends and family at Scrabble. And then throw in the Q without U words like QAT, QOPF, QANAT, QI, and then you're guaranteed to win. Because these are hard. QI is hard to get rid of, and I just told you how. But if you also know the 2-letter words, you knew XI, XU, ZA. So these are words that are not, AA is a legal word. Then you learn like odd words that are just all consonants, or words like EDH. So it's just like 3 tips. And
so let me ask you this, because you are obviously a very unique individual, right? I mean, most people aren't like you. I think you know that. You have a different form of intelligence, a different way of viewing the world, which has driven all these actions.
Yeah.
So you, through this experience, I'd say, wow, you found a way to create success, in your unique way. I mean, not many people are walking into restaurant supply stores and buying, waiter pads and saying, the form of this is perfect to create ideas right? And this is genius. The question I have though is, are there fundamental principles that you've learned based on your experience, because you've had some very tough experiences, that are applicable to us mere mortals over here?
Yeah, and by the way, I am the merest of the mortals. What happened where I built a company, sold it, made millions, and lost everything happened to me 4 times in a row over the next 10 years, where I built a company, made it between 1 and 10 million, depending on the company, and then lost every dime of it. Every dime.
So you did it 3 more times after that first one?
Yeah, 3, maybe 4. I try not to remember it all. I remember one time, I was like, again, I had done everything stupid. I had built a company, sold it for 10 million, bought 2 houses right next to each other, and had a hammock right between the houses. And I was lying in the hammock, dead broke. This was about 8 months after I had sold the company. And I was dead broke, and it started raining, and I'm like, I just was too depressed to get out of this hammock. And you can't really get out of a hammock anyway unless someone's helping you. And I thought to myself, man, did this really happen again? Like, I am so tired of doing this. Like, I don't have the energy anymore to do this. And it was, I felt so sorry for myself. And I was also getting a divorce. I was losing these houses. I mean, literally the IRS had boarded up these houses, and I was lying in this hammock. And so finally I said to myself, well, what worked for me on the way up each time? And what was I doing wrong on the way down? And I wanted to make it as simple as possible. And I had read at this point also every self-help book. They weren't really working for me. It's like getting a vitamin B injection in the morning. Like, it kind of holds you through the day, and then you're then you're dead at night. And so nothing was helping me. And so I just decided, what am I doing? What is going wrong here? So I realized on the way up each time, it happened to me so many times, I didn't even need to do a scientific experiment. I was the scientific experiment. I was statistically significant all by myself. So what was going right for me on the way up was that I was basically taking care of myself in 4 different ways. And ever since then, at night, I will check the box. Did I do these 4 things? And I got very esoteric how I analyzed this, but just the basics is, was I physically healthy? Was I doing something to make myself physically healthy and taking care of myself? Because if the extreme is, if you're sick in bed, you're not going to come up with ideas, and you're not going to execute on them. Execution being as important as ideas, because execution is a subset of ideas. Many people, there's a spectrum of execution. You can execute poorly, or you can execute well, and you need to have good execution ideas to execute well. So anyway, if you're sick in bed, you can't do that. So I do everything I can to be as healthy as possible. I don't always eat as well as I could, but I try always to be better than, or do activities that were a little healthier than the day before. So that's physical. Emotional. I wanted to be around good people who I loved, who loved me back. And as easy as that sounds, I hadn't been doing that. And I don't want to say most people don't do it. I don't want to judge. But just judging, when I started writing about this and judging from the responses I got, a very typical email I would get was, I got in bed with the wrong partners. I just found out my husband was cheating on me, and now I'm going through this ugly divorce, and so I don't have time to start a business. So if you're not emotionally taking care of yourself in your relationships, you're not going to have energy to start a business and to succeed, or to be great at something, to master a skill, whatever. Creativity, so writing these 10 ideas a day. That very first time I did it, I felt excited. It's like new neurons were connecting in my brain. And that was on day one. After 6 months of doing it, I literally felt like this waiter's pad was like a superpower. And the neurons were firing constantly. For instance, I mentioned that first time I was losing that first house. And I lived 3 blocks from ground zero. So while I was going broke, 9/11 also happened, and it was a crime scene. I couldn't sell the house. So while I was going broke, living in one of the most expensive apartments, unfortunately, in New York City, which was hard to maintain, the FBI was not letting people visit my house. I couldn't sell the house, and it was horrible. Obviously, 9/11 was much worse than my problem selling a house, but still, I couldn't sell the house. So finally, even that creativity, I started figuring out how to sell my house. I started to feel like you could just drop me off in the desert and I will figure my way out, just because everything was firing off. Everything was inspiring me to be creative.
Does every human being possess the capacity for creativity?
Absolutely.
So
Because-
it's inherent in everybody.
Yeah, I think I had practiced a little bit. My sales technique was to basically be creative for the client. So I was practicing already some creativity, but when I got depressed, I had lost all my creativity. But writing 10 ideas a day down and making yourself really sweat. I always know I've got a good list if by item number 7, I'm counting. Have I hit 10 yet? I can't come up with 3 more. And I just push myself.
So this is not waiting for inspiration. This is discipline.
You cannot wait for inspiration.
So it's basically, I got to do 10, and if I'm not feeling creative, I have to I have to flex that muscle, basically.
Every single day, I will do it. Now, I haven't done it every single day, but I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But when things are going right, physical, emotional, creative, I have to work on all those. And then what I'll call spiritual, but I don't mean it like in the way of, it's a fill in the blanks kind of spiritual, in the sense that you have to recognize what items in your life you can't control and what you can control. Because again, everything is about energy. If I spend too much time wondering, why did this client reject me? Or why does this person not like me? Why did they not return my calls? Why did they stop talking to me? Or why did this newspaper cancel my column? Or this publisher not accept my book? Or this investor not invest? If I spend too much time worrying about the things I can't control, I won't have energy to maximize the things I can control. So oddly, I will put that in the spiritual category. And so I've almost viewed it as 4 separate bodies: the physical body, emotional body, creative body, spiritual body. And just like you might have a heart attack in your physical body if your blood's cut off, I sort of imagined in my mind there was this invisible blood going back and forth between all 4 bodies. And if you were blocked or stuck in any one of these bodies, you'd get a heart attack, a metaphorical heart attack, and you wouldn't be the optimal person that succeeds. And life's somewhat competitive. To succeed, you need I needed everything working smoothly. I needed no stoppages or blockages of this invisible blood between the physical, emotional, creative, and spiritual bodies. So every day, yesterday, at the end of the day, I just check, did I do something for myself that is 1% better on my physical, emotional? Did I improve a relationship? Did I do something for the people I love? Did I cultivate a friendship. Every relationship needs watering to bloom. Spiritual. Did I obsess too much over things I can't control, which is a very common thing, or common for me? Or did I move forward and do the best I can at the things I can't control? So I always make sure I check that box every day. And the times when I lost everything, I wasn't writing the 10 ideas a day down. So finally, this is like 10 years into this, 2010, I decided, you know what? I cannot go through this again. So 2010, 2011, I was still living through this. It was like I was so stressed and anxious. I couldn't sleep because I had just gone broke again. And I finally decided, okay, I'm just going to do this now, and I'm never going to stop no matter what. Whether I'm going broke, whether I'm getting rich. And it's amazing what happens if you do this while you're losing money, because it bounces you much faster.
So, two questions. After the pain of going broke the first time, a second time, etc.,
It doesn't get better.
I imagine it gets worse even. It
gets worse.
Because how could I have done this again?
Yeah.
And I learned something.
A lot of people think it gets better. Oh, you must be really good now knowing when you go broke that you'll be able to bounce back. No, all I'm seeing is evidence that I'm broke.
Right.
And that it's probably going to get worse from here.
Oh, that's got to play mind games. I mean, now it's like, now you start worrying about, do I just bad luck, bad karma, what's going on here? But was there not some piece of you, because you're obviously extremely bright, that said, now that I've made this money, I'm going to safeguard at least some little chunk of it to have a safety net should my risks that I take not work out? How'd that not occur to you after a couple times?
Well, I would say it occurred to me after 4 or 5 times. Why didn't it occur to me after the first time going broke? I don't know. Why did it not occur to me after the second time? I have no idea. Why did it not occur to me after the third time? After the fourth time? I have no idea.
So now there had to be a blind spot somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So now the theme of the series is wealth breakthrough. What was your wealth breakthrough? So was it discovering the 4 things, or what was it?
The wealth breakthrough was that no matter what is happening, physical, emotional, creative, spiritual, 1% better each day of those 4 bodies. And I know that sounds almost simplistic, and I'm not mentioning money in that explanation, but I'll tell you a story.
Yes.
So there was one time I was involved in a company, it's $1 billion revenue company, and I was advising them, and I had shares, and we were doing great. We were growing revenues, and I had $9 million worth of stock in this company. So I'm on the set of the series premiere of the TV show Billions. You know this TV show Billions
sure.
on Showtime?
Big fan.
So in season 3, I was an advisor for the show, but this was before Showtime had even picked it up. They were filming the first episode, the series premiere, had never been on the air, and I had never seen a TV show. Despite my years at HBO, I'd never really seen a whole episode of a show being filmed. And I went out to New Jersey where they had mocked up this fake hedge fund, and one of my favorite directors was directing the episode, Neil Berger, who had directed Limitless and some other stuff. And so I was asking tons of questions. I was fascinated. And then in the middle of the day, I get a phone call, emergency board meeting in 15 minutes. And so I excused myself, went out into the parking lot, and I thought, this is amazing. The only way this could be an emergency board meeting is we got an offer to sell the company, and I'm gonna finally be able to cash out of this $9 million worth of stock. This is gonna be amazing. This is gonna be the best day of my life. Get on the board meeting, and the CEO says, listen, I have some news. Our largest shareholder, he just disclosed to us he owes $90 million in back taxes to the IRS. That goes in default of our debt agreement with the bank. The bank is on their way over right now. They're going to kick us out and lock the doors, and they're going to basically divide up the company into regions and sell each region to, they had millions of customers. They had customers like my company. Mm-hmm. They were going to sell for $1, or to get their money back, they were going to sell each region to a different one of their customers for almost nothing. Mm-hmm. And I instantly kicked into gear. I've been building my creative muscles for years. So I just started going through it like, I'll buy the company before they get to the door. I didn't have the money, doesn't matter. Ready, fire, aim was my policy. I'll say I'll buy the company, I'll make 20 calls and I'll find the money. And they're like, no, they're on their way over, it's too late. And I said, how about we sell some of the regions and I'll make the calls to other companies. We'll sell and we'll raise back their debt. We only owed them a small amount of debt, and they're like, no, all the competitors are already got the call from them. They're going to be able to buy our company for nothing. And came up with 10 ideas right there on the call, and they were laughing even though their lives were all going down the drain. They're like, James, all the ideas are good, but it's just a done deal. It's over. So I get off the call, and that was it. I had just lost in that 15 minutes $9 million. But I don't count this as one of the times I went broke, even though it's pretty close. That was like the bulk of what I had been working on. And then I'm sitting there in the middle of New Jersey. There's 9 hours left of shooting on this episode. I have no way of getting home unless I call a cab or something. And then what was I going to do at home? I was just going to get depressed. So I just went back in there and enjoyed the rest of the day. I was learning how to make a TV show. This was like a dream of mine, and I loved the show even before it had ever aired. And the writers later told me, a year later, I explained what had happened that day, and they were like, are you kidding me? We thought you had just, were in the bathroom for a really long time. You were back asking questions for the rest of the day. You stayed till you were the last person to leave. We didn't think anything was going on. And that's because at that point, I had built up the fortitude, eating healthy, being healthy, emotionally being around people I loved and who loved me, being as creative as possible every day. I had no control over this situation, so I didn't allow myself to obsess over it. I did have control over how I was going to enjoy the rest of the day, so I made the most of the rest of the day rather than just go home and cry in the fetal position, which would have been my default years earlier. And was it bad for me? Yes, but then I knew, okay, I'll just sit down again, be creative, and I'll come up with more ideas, and I'll see what other businesses I'm involved in that I could hit the accelerator on maybe to make an income, all right, a little bit more, all right, to keep myself going while I rebuild. And so by that point, I don't, and like I said, I don't even consider that one of those times where I went broke. That was just part of the process. I even thought to myself, getting off that call, this is now an opportunity to really test that this method works for me.
Yeah.
And I just focused it as that. But again, I kind of always viewed these four bodies in a completely different way, almost like my own personal religion.
So let me ask you this, because now this all leads up to, I think, an important question, which is, how would you define wealth?
I define wealth as you're completely in line, or you're completely aligned with this inner compass that tells you what you love doing, where you can do it, how you can do it, and where you need to be right now to do it. And the way you keep that instrument clean, that compass clean, is I'm always going to get back to these four invisible bodies: the physical, emotional, creative, spiritual. Every day is a challenge, right? Life's pretty hard. So some days I will obsess on something I have no control over, or some days I'll be disappointed. Oh, that person wasn't the friend I thought. Or some days, I won't be as creative. I'll have 10 bad ideas, but at least I wrote down the 10 ideas. Right. If you're writing 10 ideas a day, that's 3,650 ideas a year. Maybe one will be good.
The whole compass really integrates into this process of these four things. They're connected. But
yes.
The thing that I see that I'm sure you've observed is that, so we've gotten this amazing arc of a story, that you've just told. But it started with you talking about being in grad school and having a compass and saying my compass, was leading me somewhere else. That's been your constant companion that you've identified, early on in your life.
And I guess the difference is that sometimes I would lose track of where the compass was pointing. The lens would be dirty because I wasn't keeping this invisible blood between these four bodies, flowing as well as possible. Mm-hmm. And then the compass would be unclear. And that was very important for me to realize, is that I can't really. I would always think money was the end, and so once I made the money, chapter 2 of being a human would begin, and I can just wipe my hands. Everything I'd done before to be a good human, I don't have to do anymore. I got to this point of being a good human. Now I could just do whatever, and that was just the wrong way to think. I would just instantly get punished for that. And punished is the right word. I would punish myself in a weird way. So people always ask me, well, what do you do with the ideas afterwards? Do you keep them around? Do you follow up on them the next day? Like, how do you keep track? No, I throw out the ideas every day, because you're not going to, what am I going to do? Come up with 10 great ideas that I'm going to do every day? No. Once in a while, something will stand out, like, oh, I kind of like that. So the next day, my list will be 10 very simple execution ideas on that one idea from a week before. And then maybe I'll do one of those execution steps. Because that's what I realized too also, and this is more related to the nuts and bolts of building a business or succeeding with an idea. But people say execution is everything, and they seem to think people know what that means when they say execution. But I've seen 5 different people take the same idea and execute them differently. And sometimes the execution would be so bad that there would be no conceivable way this person could succeed as a business, as an idea, whatever. But then sometimes the exact same idea, I'd see someone execute it flawlessly, and that will work. And so execution ideas, as I said before, is a subset of ideas. If you have an idea, what are the next steps is the question. That's the list for the next day. You have to make them good execution steps. Are they good ideas? Maybe one of them is. And then if you want, the next day you could try to execute. First off, at any given point, I might have 30 halfway decent business ideas, but for various reasons, I'm not going to execute on them. I'm not ready yet to execute on them. I don't have certain abilities or connections to execute on them. But you always want to figure out, how can I test out an idea? And you want to figure out the simplest and fastest way to test out an idea. You only know something is good if you do it. You know, everyone always says doing is the only way to know.
Right.
And knowing is the only way to do. So you have to know a lot to do something, but then to know if something is a good idea or not, you have to do the idea. And otherwise you'll never know. So the critical thing is you expend as little energy as possible until you're going to decide to really push yourself on this idea. And again, let's call that an experiment. So part of my philosophy of making money, of living a creative life, of having fun, is to experiment with as many ideas as possible, as much as possible. So what's an experiment? Can I give you one example?
Sure.
This is a stupid, dumb example, but it was an experiment. I took the best-selling book of all time, 50 Shades of Grey, and I found like a Word document of it, and I went on Fiverr.com, and I found some random person in India for $10 who will do this. I said, take every word in this book and replace it with a synonym. And I found another person on Fiverr.com, and I said, make a cover for me. I changed the title of 50 Shades of Grey to another title, but it sounded like 50 Shades of Grey a little bit. And so now within a few weeks, I had a 500-page, completely new book that was exactly 50 Shades of Grey, except 100% of the words were different. So instead of saying Julia had to rush back to her tests, it would say something like, Shannon went as quickly as possible back to her classes for examinations. And so every word is different, and I did that sentence by sentence for 50 Shades of Grey. I uploaded it to Amazon, which is all you have to do to publish a book on Amazon. And to this day, I still have this book on Amazon, under a pseudonym, of course. And it actually sold 85 copies, but it has gotten no reviews because it's probably hard. I've never even read it. Has no reviews. But that was an experiment that also took me about an hour of my time. Why not do an experiment like that just to see? What if it sold as well as 50 Shades of Grey? Who knows? So I'm doing experiments constantly. At any given point, I'm in like 10 different experiments.
So what are your main activities right now? Like, so I see you're still being creative. You're running experiments like that book. What are your main activities now?
So I have a podcast I've been doing for 6 years, and I interview peak performers in any industry. And I love doing that because I love, how did somebody learn to be the best in the world at what they do? How did this race car driver learn to become the best race car driver? How did Kareem Abdul-Jabbar learn to be the best basketball player? There's plenty of people who are 7 feet tall. There's not that many 7 feet tall people who are the best basketball players in history. How did Richard Branson go from being a music magazine publisher to the owner of an airline and then a billionaire? Or how did Sarah Blakely go from selling fax machines door to door, not knowing anything about the fashion industry, to having one of the biggest clothing companies in the world? Or Tyra Banks go from being a model to having a TV show now in its 31st season. So I'm always fascinated. How do people learn? How do people achieve peak performance? Because I want to develop my own methodology built on top of these 4 bodies, where you can continue to, whatever you're interested in, and your interests constantly change, whatever you're interested in, I don't want to put 10,000 hours now into learning, into being great at something. I want to find out how the best in the world get to be great, and then I want to model that so I can at least taste greatness as quickly as possible. And so that's the podcast. I write books. I've written 22 books at this point. Some of them have sold 299 copies and were horrible. One of them has sold over 1 million copies. Hopefully more of them will get there. And I enjoy writing, and I experiment with different styles of writing. I've been writing almost every day since 1990, so I love exploring different genres and ways of writing and points of view and so on. I help run different businesses. I'm an active investor. I'm invested in over 30 businesses. I help run a business right now involving financial newsletters and education and so on, that I hope helps people in ways that Wall Street has abandoned people. I own a stand-up comedy club, and I perform anywhere from 3 to 10 times a week. This week I'm performing 6 times, and I help run that club. That's my least favorite activity. I really just like going on stage, but during the day, sometimes I'll have to think of my material, and I'll watch other comedians. Even for public speaking, long before I was doing stand-up comedy, I've been doing stand-up comedy. I'm in the 5th year of doing that. Long before doing that, before I would give a public talk, I would always watch stand-up comedy obsessively, starting about 24 hours before the talk, because we have these things in our brain called mirror neurons. So if you don't know how to climb a ladder, but you watch someone climbing a ladder, now you know how to climb a ladder. You don't need to do it. Your mirror neurons have taught you how to do it as if you were the one doing it. And the same thing for public speaking. Stand-up comics are the best public speakers. So I'm going to watch the best public speakers before a talk, and so my mirror neurons will still be firing, and then I'll give the talk, and I'll have the benefit of that. So I've always loved stand-up comedy. It's helped me in other areas of my life, but I was too afraid to go on stage. Now the past 4 or 5 years I've been going on stage, and it's worked very well for me. It helps in every other area of my life. So being a chess player has helped in every other area of my life. Being, for a small amount of time, a professional poker player has helped in every other area of my life. Being an entrepreneur has helped in other areas. Being a comedian or a writer has helped in other areas, and so on.
So after this amazing story of your life, with all the lessons learned along the way, so now here you are, your early 50s. Are you happy?
No. I mean, I don't like the word happy. I think if, let's say, I play a hand of poker and I win a lot of money in that one hand, you get this surge of dopamine, and right then I'm happy. Right? The happiness you get on a dopamine hit is much better than general everyday happiness. But that's why dopamine is absorbed by the body within seconds. So it's a special kind of happiness, but people, I think, strive for it too much. You get it only so many times before you get addicted to it. But I think well-being is something a little different. And I do think I have a certain degree of well-being, and I think that's what, being around people you love, doing what you love to do, being healthy, you get kind of this satisfied well-being. Because sometimes you don't want to be happy. Sometimes, for instance, I'm melancholy, and I actually like that feeling as well. I might miss my kids if they're not around. That's a melancholy feeling, not a happy feeling. I think people are too addicted to, there's books, happiness this, happiness that, being happy all the time. That's not an interest of mine.
Is it maybe fulfillment?
No, because I don't know what's going to fulfill me from day to day, because I'm always trying different things. And, I think really it's just, did I follow my own process? Then I know I had a good day. And I always tell myself the best predictor of a good day tomorrow is a good day today. And I just try to follow this process as much as I can. And sometimes I fail. And so the goal is to, as consistently as possible, keep to my daily process.
Do you know of any future aspirations you have that that you haven't done yet? Saying this is something that I want to do in my life that I haven't done yet.
Yeah, but like random things. I mean, there's nothing, because I always know I'll figure out each day, and it might be something completely surprising and unusual. Like I never thought I would be so interested in doing stand-up comedy, as an example. I loved it, but I didn't think I would do it. And I've never written a thriller novel. I've had a lot of thriller writers on my podcast, and I always break down their process, really trying to understand, and I read all their books and then try to understand. And so I think I can make a stab at writing a thriller novel. I'd like to do that. I definitely don't want to start another business again.
No, you're done with that.
I hate it. And you don't need to start a business to build wealth. The average multimillionaire, according to the IRS, not according to me, has 7 different sources of income. So a job or being an entrepreneur is just one source of income. So I like to invest in very small amounts of money, like I will never invest more than 1% of my net worth in any one investment. But if an investment takes off, I'll make a lot of money. And if an investment fails, I only lost 1% of my net worth. So I like looking at small private companies to invest in. And I have a methodology behind investing. My number one rule is someone smarter than me has to be investing alongside of me. So I can never think I am smart enough to invest in XYZ genomics company or XYZ robotics company or whatever it is. If I see, let's say Warren Buffett is invested in a company, and I'm never going to say, if I run into him at a cocktail party, I'm never going to say, Warren, how could you have been so stupid to invest in that company? No, I will just write the check. I don't even care what the company is. Well, here you go, Warren. You take your own fee on it and just give me the money when it makes money. And so I'm always with people smarter than me. I don't have to do that much due diligence on the company. And I no longer advise companies because that was very stressful, like that $9 million example. So once a company calls me for advice after I've invested, I remove them from my phone book because they're going out of business. But fortunately, because I follow this advice, my co-investors have to be smarter than me. The CEO has to have built and sold a similar company before. Just those 2 rules, and there should be some revenue generation already. So he knows how to make money, and I know that he knows how to sell, or she knows how to sell a company because they've done it in the past. Then I never have to think about it again. And so I'm able to invest and not take too much energy and conserve energy for doing the things I love.
So, and incidentally, I think that's genius investment strategy. It's because it's simple,
and it
makes a ton of sense.
It works because venture capitalists will always say, 9 out of 10 companies will fail. Nope. I mean, right now, every single company I'm invested in is over the hump, meaning they're doubling in revenues every year, or they're profitable, or they no longer need to raise money. They're now deciding, should we wait 1 year, 5 years, or 10 years before we are big enough that we sell or exit? So this strategy works extremely, extremely well.
So you're building your wealth now, not through running or starting a business, but through investing in other businesses.
Correct. Although, I mean, it's only recently I built a business. I started a business in 2015. In 2018, it did $60 million in revenues. But again, I knew I wasn't the person to run it. So at first, I hired a CEO and a complete management team, and they all lived in other cities. I didn't want to live in the same city. Sold the company, but still I have an active profit share with it. So again, I use as little energy as possible to create as much success as possible. But I don't think I'm gonna do that again. I'm done with that, except for owning a comedy club, unfortunately. The worst investment ever. That is not a good investment. Nobody should buy a physical space.
So you're talking about from the real estate side or the sector of being in a comedy club or both?
Both.
Okay.
Who's going to buy a clothing store? That's a horrible idea.
Yeah.
So, restaurant is usually a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm a bar/comedy club on a side street in the Upper West Side. It's in business and it's treading water, but it's not Uber.
But this is for your own fulfillment, right?
Yeah.
So in that respect, it's a good investment because it brings you some pleasure in your life?
Yeah, like I don't own a home. I don't buy a car. I don't own a boat. So many of these things that as people get older and have some money they could spend, they buy other things that I don't like. I bought this for probably a cheaper price than what other people spend on their houses or their
Boats.
cars or their yachts or whatever, or their vacation homes or their vacations, period.
Why don't you own a home?
Let me frame it in a different way. Would you ever say, you know what, I really like Apple stock, so I'm going to put my entire net worth in this one stock, and then I'm going to borrow 500%. I'm going to take everything I own, and then I'm going to borrow 5 times that and put it all into Apple, and I can't sell it when I most need it. Is that what you would say to yourself? Boy, if someone said to you they were going to do that, you would say, do not do that. That is the worst investment strategy I've ever heard, even if Apple is a good stock. And they're like, no, trust me. I'm gonna borrow this money, and Apple's gonna kill it, and everybody does it. You would say, no, you would never do it. So a house is the same thing. Just replace Apple by house. Most people put all the money they can afford into the down payment. Then they borrow another 400 or 500%. And then every year they have to they spend extra money they didn't account for to maintain the house, to take care of it, to pay property taxes, which are always volatile. And then let's say they need to sell it. They're desperate to sell it. You can't, because usually when you're desperate, other people are desperate, and you can't sell. So it's illiquid. So it's worse than Apple. You can't sell it on a stock market. You sell it on a illiquid housing market. So a house is just a horrible investment. Think about why houses exist. A factory wants to pay as little as possible to its workers. So, hey, we'll lend you the money. This is traditionally 100 years ago. We'll lend you the money to buy a house. Don't worry. We want our workers to be happy. And so everyone is forced to live around the factory, and you can't sell it. So your income, you're not mobile, so you can't choose to have a different job. You're stuck with this income. So your income mobility is more difficult. Like housing has never been a good idea. Housing could be an investment, but not in the U.S. U.S. is a poor investment.
Well, so it's interesting because I think it used to be you're going to work in that job in the factory for 30 years and retire, and mortgages would match the time that you're going to be working there, so you pay off the house. That's kind of a retirement, but in today's world, it seems like a very different scenario.
Yeah, the average person changes jobs every 4 years.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people are leaving the workplace because of automation. Even though we're at the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years, part of the reason for that is that so many people have left the workforce due to automation, and so they're not counted in the employment rates anymore. They're on disability or some other kind of program, and they no longer count towards the unemployment rate. So this is a problem systemically right now, how much automation will affect the labor force and levels of well-being in the labor force. It hasn't totally hit yet, but it's one of those things that's going to hit very soon. And so it's just something to be careful of.
Well, I feel like I could talk to you for about a week and still get fresh new stories and information from you, but this has been a really fascinating journey.
Well, thank you for having me on this series and this show. And I skipped over a lot of stories, but that's fine. I think I got to the meaty ones. I'll ask you one final question, because this was related to my very first idea list. How do you beat your friends and family at Monopoly? Do you know the answer?
No.
Get the orange properties. Like Tennessee, St. James, New York Avenue. And I'll tell you why. What's the most commonly... Do you know how to play Monopoly?
Yes.
Do you know the most commonly landed square in Monopoly?
I don't. Which one?
Jail. Because you can go to jail by landing there on the dice. You can land on the go to jail square, and there's 2 community chest cards that make you go to jail. So jail is going to be the most commonly landed on card. The most common dice roll of 2 dice is 7. 7 puts you right in the middle. 6 through 8 put you right in the middle of the orange properties. So if you own all the hotels on the orange properties, that's going to be the most common properties people land on. You'll just clean up. Now just beat your friend, anybody you want at Monopoly.
Well, now we're gonna have a bunch of people that run out and go blow the dust off their Monopoly boards and say, "Let me play this game again." Now I'm gonna beat everybody.
That's okay. I have one other trick which I'll tell you after the show's over, so you can beat them.
Okay, great. I get some inside information now.
Yes.
James, it's been really, really a joy to be with you today. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
We are so excited about the momentum that's building from Wealth Breakthroughs. It's actually beyond our expectations. And I want to give a special thank you for those of you who already jumped in and bought the series. It means a lot to us. It tells us that it's adding value to your life, and it also supports this work so we can continue to do it and get this information out to the world so people everywhere can have their wealth breakthrough. So thank you so very much. Hope you enjoyed that interview with James. James is the classic big idea, swing for the fences wealth breakthrough story. Now, let's switch gears. Did you know there's a strong case why you should avoid retirement plans like 401ks and IRAs? Did you know John D. Rockefeller built much of his fortune using one little known secret? And do you know there are just 4 investments preferred by the 1% that are 100% guaranteed to hand you reliable returns? Any of those 3 questions grab your attention? I bet they all did. Well, unpacking the mysteries of wealth, figuring out what makes it flow towards some people and away from others, how to be smarter about money in ways big and small every day, and showing folks how to break the chains of the 9-to-5 life is the specialty of Garrett Gunderson. He's one of my favorite people on earth to talk to about money and wealth, and we're pleased to present his new interview to you here in episode 4 of Wealth Breakthroughs. So Garrett, when I think about the idea of having a wealth breakthrough, you're the first person that comes to my mind, and for good reason, because how many years I've known you and my experience the first time I met you and how radical a thinker you were in this realm had a massive impact on me. So I'm really excited to have this particular conversation.
Me too. I always like our conversations.
Yeah, they lead somewhere, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Somewhere productive. So let's start with you first as far as your kind of trajectory. What was your upbringing? How'd you end up doing the type of work you're doing?
Well, look, I grew up in a coal mining town. I mean, my great-grandfather left San Giovanni, Italy, left his family behind for 7 years, became a goat herder and eventually a coal miner. Mm-hmm. And it took him that 7 years to save up enough money to have a house and afford to get them over to the United States. So that creates a lot of scarcity. And then my grandfathers were coal miners. My father was a coal miner. So I came from a very blue-collar background where the belief was, if you just work hard enough, everything's going to work out. Mm-hmm. But the reality was it didn't, right? Mines went on strike. There were mine disasters, things like that. So when I was 15, I was playing sports and in school, and I wanted to have a job to have some extra money, but it was a little hard to do and navigate sports. So I actually started my first official business, detailing cars. So I just cleaned cars. My dad being a coal miner would bring home the surface vehicles for the bosses. I'd clean those up. My mom worked in a credit union. They'd repossess the vehicles. I'd clean them up so they could sell them for more. And then I started winning young entrepreneur competitions. And that came with money, and I wanted to invest that money. Now, my mom, being the Italian that she was, her money management method was put money in a coffee can, put it in the cellar, and you don't ever give anyone else that money, right? So there's just all this accumulation, scarcity, pinching pennies type of mentality. Right. So when I was like, I want to invest, she wouldn't sign off.
Wow. So you had, as a teenager, I guess you had some money. What kind of money were you talking about?
Oh, look, man, I was more in like the millionaire next door mindset when I was a teenager. Mm-hmm. I thought if I just never spent money, I could accumulate a lot. So the first year in business, which was about 8 months total, I think I made $600 of net income, but then I won $500 for taking third place for the Rural Young Entrepreneur. Uh-huh. The second year I took first, it came with $1,000, and then I won it for the state, which came with $5,000. And
statewide championship you went on this. Okay.
Yep, statewide, so Governor's Young Entrepreneur. And And I remember getting handed that $5,000 check and thinking that was a lot of money. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to invest this money. That's big time. And I didn't realize it was just a drop in the bucket. It didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it at least got me thinking. It had me asking different questions, had me going and interviewing the wealthiest people that I knew, which to me at the time was who had the biggest homes.
Right.
Like that was basically the mindset I was in at that age.
So then off to college. What was next?
Yeah, I did go to college. I had a scholarship. I went to Southern Utah University, a small college, but fortunately, I became a senator there. And the year I became a business senator for the college, this guy, Steve Harrop, showed up, and he was going to be a professor. And so he had managed money for 25 years and ended up managing $5 billion of Strong Investments. At the time, it was the number 2 investment company in the world as far as performance and ranking. And he just decided his next 25 years, he was going to pay it forward. So I greeted him when he came on board. I ended up getting to know him a little bit, found out he wanted to work out, so I became his racquetball partner. But after racquetball, we'd go get a yogurt and we'd just sit down and talk and ask him a lot of questions. And at that same time, I was doing an internship, June of 1998, in the financial industry. And when the market started to go down in 2000, he became instrumental in me facing all my clients and saying, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. You're investing in the market. I don't know how long this is going to last on a downturn. Telling you you're in it for the long haul doesn't sound like the right thing. Telling you the market's on sale seems insulting because you've already got your money in and it's going down. So we save people hundreds of thousands. It would have been millions, but I was pretty young at the time. And then in the year 2001 and 2002, my clients did 44% positive return and 41% positive return, and they were out of the market 80% of the time. And that's where my financial journey really began.
When you had that sort of, I guess, called epiphany, or you got to see, how the difference in performance in those 2 years, what did you start thinking? Like, how did that affect your decisions about what you wanted to do with your life?
Well, the way it really affected me was in the year 2000, because I went from being this little financial Einstein of my community, a town of 12,000 people, and a lot of them they're becoming my clients simply because no one's really talking to them. I'm having them cash in double E bonds and put it in mutual funds.
Right.
And yeah, in 98, 99, everyone's making money. Now the market goes down. A lot of my clients are family members, so family reunions become more awkward than normal.
Yeah, right.
So I'm showing up and they're like, what's going on? And that's when I had to tell them I didn't know what I was doing. And that's when I went on a journey for 26 straight months, flying somewhere once a month, spending anywhere from 2 days to a full week. And I was just interviewing people. I leveraged my age. See, when you're 19 years old, almost anyone will talk to you because they want to pay it forward.
Right.
So I didn't have to write a check to get that mentorship. I just asked questions. And I had a little red memo pad I would flip, and I had all these questions I'd ask them. I'd go meet with actuaries. I'd go meet with fund managers. I'd go meet with people that were working with and advising people on Wall Street. And I just got a huge awakening during that time of what was really going on, because I saw people that were worth $20 million and they sold stocks, but they had less than 5% of their portfolio in stocks. And so that was kind of shocking. And then I went and saw a family office for the first time, which is a group that essentially the client wasn't even there, but this guy was presenting a $400 million transaction. And it was all these people doing real due diligence. I wrote a book, What Would the Rockefellers Do? And what the Rockefellers did to create generational wealth was they actually hired financial professionals that just worked for their family. So the Rockefeller had their own group of accountants and attorneys and investment advisors and fiduciaries and risk management specialists that helped manage their entire family wealth. And so hence family office. Now in today's world, these family offices, it means you're under one roof and you've got this entire team of professionals, but they might manage 10, 20, or 100 families. And so when I saw that, I was like, this is phenomenal. How does this work? Because the client wasn't even in the room.
Right.
They weren't even past that stage to bring the client in to say, here's something we think you should consider. And I just saw that their first emphasis was, how can we be tax efficient? How can we be tax efficient? Because that's a guaranteed return. And my question changed from where should we invest to what are the guarantees in finance, and I found there were 4 areas that you could have a guaranteed return.
What are they?
All right, so the first one is saving on tax. The majority of the population is overpaying on tax, and with all the tax law changes, it's almost everyone, including me. I think about it all the time, but I just got what's called a DPAD credit because I'm creating books and all this stuff, and I was able to go back 3 years and amend those returns because of DPAD or Section 199, and get that amendment.
Right.
See, because I'm constantly asking these questions. I'm constantly bringing new people into my life, and I know what conversations to have with them. So the second one is interest. There's a lot of ways that you can save interest, whether it's you reallocate. So let's say that you have an underperforming asset, like a certificate of deposit or a bond or something like that. And then you have a loan that you're paying more interest than what you're earning. Why not cash that thing out, pay it off, and it's a guaranteed return.
Right.
Or you can restructure the loan, right? If you have collateral like a car, you could refinance a car and pay off other loans that might be double that interest rate, and all of a sudden a car loan improves your credit score. An improved credit score might allow you to refinance a mortgage, and refinance that mortgage in today's interest rate environments will save you a boatload of cash. So you can restructure, you could reallocate, or you could renegotiate. All loans are negotiable, and if you know how to have that conversation and how to set yourself up to look good to the banks and institutions, you can lower the interest rate. So we got, the IRS, then we've got interest. Next is investments. Investments are riddled with hidden fees, hidden commissions, non-performing fees, and if you can discover where those are, you can boost your returns substantially. Now, it seems like it would be incremental, because if I told you, hey, you could earn 9.2% or 10%, that doesn't sound really big,
Right.
but it's logarithmic. So think about if you had 100 grand over 30 years, that 100 grand could grow to 1.74 million at 10%. At 9.2%, it grows to 1.4 million. That's $340,000 from what seemed to be inconsequential costs.
Right.
The other big part on investments is people just participate in the downturn when they don't need to. They can create measures and structures to cash out, sit in cash, and then when everyone else loses, they can buy and make money on the buy. The fourth place is insurance. There's duplicate coverages, there's improper structure. And all you really have to do is say, how can you insure the catastrophic and not the inconsequential? So you give the insurance companies less money, and you only insure the things that would actually derail or harm you, and there's a lot of money that you can put back into your pocket while still protecting yourself.
So from a categoric standpoint, what makes this really interesting is a lot of times people are saying, how can I invest and what kind of return can I get? But literally, that kind of return they're trying to get, it could be gained just by getting more efficient in all those four categories you just mentioned.
So inside of what would the Rockefellers do, we did this study. We said, what if someone had $1 million to invest? And we can take a zero off and make it 100,000, or we can add a zero, make it 10 million. The number isn't as important. But we said, what if you had $1 million? What rate of return would you have to earn if you're in a standard situation where you have two loans, right? Where you have a business or even a side hustle? What would you have to earn on that money in order to equate what it would take if we went through those four I's of the IRS, interest, investments, and insurance, and just remove the drag and keep more of what you make? And the rate of return would have to be 44%.
Wow.
Or it would have to be tax-free at like 30%, right? Or 29%. That's extraordinarily hard to get. Warren Buffett's at 22%. Ray Dalio maybe is getting those numbers, but the majority of the population isn't. And by the way, they're taking unnecessary risk to try to get that higher return. And a lot of times it doesn't pan out. And that's hard to sustain that for year after year. Maybe a business can grow 50% one year, but we're not going to see the major players like Apple double in size over a year, right? Or double their stock value. So these are the things that are so essential, because if you can be more efficient, you get a win right now. If you go those four I's. If you can make money on the buy, which was another thing, when I said we got really high rates of return while sitting in cash, there's an entire philosophy that when we're in distressed economies, those people with cash are king. Right now, the wealthiest families in America have 36% of their assets in cash and cash equivalents.
Wow.
While everyone else is being taught to be fully deployed and allocated into retirement plans that are illiquid, that they couldn't get that cash if they wanted to. So being in cash means you have negotiating power when people need to liquidate. And the big reason this happens is because we've overemphasized as a society net worth. Net worth is a number on a piece of paper that could be converted into cash, but typically doesn't directly equate to cash flow.
Right.
So we've overemphasized muscle, like, okay, we're gonna have this, we got this big net worth, we got bragging rights. It's kind of like revenue for a business. Revenue's impressive, it's awesome, but it ain't what you make.
Right.
It's what you keep.
Right.
So instead, we're looking at cash flow, and those people that don't manage their cash flow appropriately, recessions decimate them. And the people that make huge amounts of money are the ones that have the cash to help create liquidity for those people at a deep, deep discount. That's called making money on the buy.
Well, pausing on that for a second, if we look at saying, okay, keep a large chunk of your assets in cash or cash equivalents. One side says, well, you don't want to do that because with inflation, every day that cash is worth less and less. Whereas if it's in an asset and that asset happens to be moving up, then of course you're not losing it. But I guess there's an offset saying by having that cash, the opportunities when they occur, and they always do occur at some point.
They always do.
The return on those opportunities because you're in cash are extraordinary, which is why you want to stay there.
Right, and here's the thing, we can all have great opportunities come our way. A lot of people don't have the ability to capitalize on that. But recessions create conditions for massive opportunities, not just an opportunity.
Right.
And right now, We're in the longest period of time in U.S. history without a recession, although we're showing all the signs of the recession. And there's too many people that are overextended, over-leveraged, utilizing credit, and that's been boosting the economy. And as that cuts back, those people that have cash will find the people in distress that were only focused on net worth and can get a 40% return in the short term. Maybe they missed out for 2 years. Maybe they didn't earn any money during that time, but they're going to make up for it when they come in and capitalize, just like we talked about in 2001 and 2002.
So showing up at the family office seemed to be an inflection point while you're taking notes on your little red pad, and certainly it led you to some of these conclusions. What happened from there?
So at that point, it was actually an interesting year because I would come back to the firm that I was working for, and they'd bring in attorneys and investment advisors, and they'd pitch these ideas. And I was labeled a fanatic because I just asked so many questions. And then they would say, well, but, because I'm questioning how they get compensated, essentially.
Right.
And so it took me a minute, but I had to start my own thing.
Let's talk about that for a minute, though. You're questioning how they're getting compensated. How are they getting compensated?
Well, typically it's by commission or by fees because of assets under management. You referred me someone once, and I quoted them for us to help them would be 20 grand. And he said, that seems really expensive. I said, okay, well, it's all relative because I've looked at your portfolio, and how'd you do last year? He goes, well, I lost money. I said, well, did you know that you paid $19,600 in fees, even though you lost money? He said, no. I said, well, see, in the old days when you were robbed, someone showed up with a gun on a horse or something. Now it's just automatically coming out of the account. But I know how to look for those fees. And he said, oh, and by the way, this was someone who had 33 businesses, so we saved him $39,000 per month in going through saving on tax, restructuring loans, using the very 4 I's that we talked about. And after that, we became friends because I said, how expensive do you think we are? And he just giggled about it, right? Like New Yorker guy too, by the way, in Boston.
So $39,000 a month just on savings, what would it take to generate that additional $39,000 a month in trying to create new business?
Well, think about it in today's world. If we think about investing, like there's people that are putting money in retirement plans, okay? Retirement plans follow a faulty notion anyway because it's all based upon an accumulation theory that it's how much money you put in. And so that's the notion it takes money to make money, which a lot of people unfortunately believe, but that's not true. Then it's what kind of return can you get? And most people believe that's high risk equals high return, so they're taking an unnecessary amount of risk. And then it's how long can you wait on the time? So money times rate times time. So they put money in these types of plans, and let's say that they do okay. Let's say they do really well, as a matter of fact. They get $1 million in these plans, because there's not a lot of retirement plans with $1 million. Yahoo Finance did an article saying it's about 1.2% of people.
Wow.
So that's not great. Now let's look at today's interest rate environments. Interest rates are so low, that's amazing for business owners. It's terrible for retirees. Because if your interest rates are 3%, you have $1 million, but you're only getting $30,000 per year in interest that's all taxable. So you're a millionaire on paper, you're a pauper in life.
Right.
And that's the unfortunate thing here. So if we're trying to generate $39,000 per month from a retirement plan, think about the amount of money that needs to be in there. We're talking about 8 figures. Wow. 8 figures of money. And how are you going to get there? This guy was in his 50s. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take really savvy investing because a standard mutual fund is not going to get him there.
You ask all these questions, you find out about people's fees, and you're starting to look at it not from how can you get paid, but from the point of view of the people you're trying to serve, and you decide you got to go out on your own.
Right, and this is the difficult piece of that. Because at that time, I had tasted what it's like to get paid commissions. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Right? The transaction happens, like, oh, what do I pay you? I'm like, I get paid a commission. And, it's like they don't even know what's leaving their hands. Right. And then I'm now going to, okay, we don't get paid commissions. We don't get fees on assets under management. You just have to write us a check. Right. That's a more difficult stance.
Yeah.
I think it's the more ethical stance. I think it's the more valuable stance. And as you know, I even put guarantees. I'm like, if we don't find this money and put it back into your life, it's on us and we'll pay you back.
And that's how you started your new business?
That's how we started the business. And by the way, the very first fee I ever charged was $1,500. And I remember the person looking at me like, that's so ridiculously low, I don't trust you, right? Like I was like, oh wait, $1,500 per quarter? Like I threw something out there, but it was just so foreign, and it was so like, it was difficult to and then all of a sudden they started exponentially going up on our side because our performance of what we could provide for them went up. And we're like, great, let's look at this as, are you okay if I get paid $100,000 if I save you $2 million? And people are like, great. And if they weren't, then they're just not in the right mindset.
So you then went out, created your own firm. You had some partners.
Yep, 3 other partners.
And then where'd that go?
We did really well. I mean, we did well enough that we bought a company plane and, had all that kind of stuff. But in 2006, that company plane went down with 2 of them in it.
Wow.
So we started to host events, and we created a monthly membership. This is before WordPress and Kajabi and all these things that are basically free that you could use as a platform. We had to go build something that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to deliver content on a daily basis, because what we discovered is no matter how much money someone had or how much money we could save them, if they couldn't conquer the scarcity mindset, it didn't matter, because there's no greater destroyer of wealth. And I don't care how much luck someone has, how much discipline, what kind of rate of return they can get, what financial advisor they have. If they're in scarcity, that fear, doubt, and worry destroys wealth, and they'll find a way to mess it up.
So your premise, and this is important because we're talking about wealth breakthroughs here, right? So your premise is that mindset is the greatest destroyer of wealth, or can be.
Right, and I'll see people, I'll put a video out there and people say something like, yeah, that's fine if you're wealthy, and I could never be that wealthy because of either where they're born or their circumstance, but all of it comes down to their perspective. Our perspective determines our action. And so most people's perspective is stuck in one of 2 paradigms that are both scarcity related. One is playing not to lose. Playing not to lose from the coal mining town I came from is where you're holding on to the past. You don't want any innovation. You want fossil fuels and coal to be the future, because that's your skill set. That's what you know. That's where your paycheck comes from. And you'll hold on to that and grasp onto that. And people that only focus on keeping the past the same are in the most dangerous, painful place moving forward. Now, there's other people that we might even see on the cover of magazines. We might hear about getting awards, and they're stuck in a different paradigm. That's the play to win paradigm. And a lot of people wear it like a badge. Like, I play to win. And what they'll do is they'll hustle their life away. They'll lose family, they'll lose friends, and they'll be aggressive, right? I play to win. I'm just gonna put all the chips on the table, and then they get wiped out and they have to start over. And then they get wiped out and they have to start over. And they get more bitter and more exhausted, and there's more body bags laying around them as time goes on, because they're only thinking about the future. There's no celebration along the way. There is no acceptance, and it's almost like people that have just never healed from whatever trauma in their life. They're just going, I gotta fill this void. And if I'm successful enough, then maybe people will love me, maybe they'll accept me. And you see a lot of entrepreneurs in that situation. Both are forms of scarcity. Both are highly dangerous. My philosophy is win then play.
So what is win then play, and how might that apply to a wealth breakthrough?
So win then play begins with abundance, right? And look, society helps to propagate scarcity. Society's trained people to be busy and consume. It's the belief that if I work hard enough, I'll have what I want. It's the belief that one day, someday, I'll be able to retire and finally get to live life. So it's always in the future, right? It's always eventually. Or it's, I'm just never spending any money, so I'll be okay, right? It's one of those things. And it's kind of like, I feel like Wall Street went to Christmas Carol and they left at intermission. So they thought Scrooge, they thought that was a good deal. Like, oh, look at him, all of his money, right? Even though they missed the redemption story. And that's kind of that penny pincher that until they get blisters on their fingers. And on the other hand, you've got the notoriety of like, ooh, here's someone that does so much good in society, but they don't do good for themselves or for their family, or they don't enjoy life. So win then play is that you actually create a game worth winning. You make sure the juice is worth the squeeze, and most importantly, you enjoy the journey along the way, because you're coming from abundance. Abundance says, hey, even if there's a finite amount of resources, there's innovation, there's human ingenuity, there's creativity, and in abundance, we believe that profit is evidence of value creation. In scarcity, profit is evidence of deception and coercion. So people don't want to be rich because they think of rich people as bad or wrong or taking something, because in scarcity, it's a zero-sum game. One person wins at the expense of another. There's no cooperation, there's no communication, it's completely competition that they try to decimate and destroy. People in Play Not to Lose are trying not to be destroyed, and people in Play to Win are trying to destroy. In Win Then Play, it's you create a compelling, exciting future, but you enjoy the journey along the way, and when it comes to money, it comes down to 4 things. Number 1, make money on the buy. You're not waiting for 30 years. You're looking at how you can buy because of the situation that your cash can buy a deep discount, so you're profitable from day one.
Give me an example of that.
In 2014, there was a business that just skyrocketed coming out of the recession. But the problem was the person leading the business was teaching something that wasn't their ultimate expertise. And when they got into some trouble or hit some bumps and stumbled along the way, they lost their voice. They lost their ability to deliver the value they originally created. And they were willing to let it go, but they didn't want to lose their legacy. I was able to come in and buy that at a deep discount based upon that distress. And so right away I was profitable. I just interviewed a couple people that bought businesses because the business owner had had something happen with either their health in one situation, or with their family in another situation, and they had to unload that so they could focus on something because it was very important to them to take care of those things, so they were willing to let that go at a deep discount. Or real estate. There's people that they could go and buy that piece of real estate because they know what to do with it, and the person that owns it doesn't, right? Maybe they can go in and say, hey, if I fractionalize this into 10 pieces and sell this as a corporate retreat, I can sell it for 20% more. But the person selling it is going, I can't rent this thing out because I don't know how to rent it. So they're going to sell it for 30% less. You're already at 50% improvement simply because of your knowledge.
So you win on the buy. So basically saying, don't invest in something and wait some time to the future, but find a way to win immediately on the transaction.
Right, so I just did this today.
Okay.
Today, we want to create a new product that helps people navigate the recession. And so rather than going and building it, we said, why don't we pre-sell it? So we sold 600 tickets to the virtual summit. So we had 600 people registered, and they were now watching, and then we filmed it and let them know, hey, we're turning this into a product. So they paid for all the production. We tested out what was working, what wasn't working, so we now have 600 people going, I want that, and now we'll have a product just 2 months later that we can resell to the marketplace, and then they actually get a
So
video.
that's fascinating because it's, and I've heard this maybe done like testing an infomercial with a book, but the book isn't written yet. If there's no interest in the book, then they won't print the book, or if there were orders that came in, just refund the orders and you don't have to get into it.
Yeah, I pre-sold Killing Sacred Cows, 22,000 copies before it was ever released. I pre-sold it by saying, hey, I'll give you this. Back then it was DVD and this teleseminar series and these transcripts, and you'll get that right now, but you won't get the book till it's complete. So they kind of knew what the content was going to be in the book. They could benefit from it now with the bonuses, but now I already knew I was going to hit New York Times. Now I already knew there was going to be momentum. See, erroneously in Play to Win, people go borrow money. They let venture capitalists into their life that start to control all their actions, that minimize who they are with their micromanagement, and sometimes even push that owner and founder out and change the vision of the company, or squash it because it's not profitable enough, even if it's profitable.
Right.
I would rather see us go right to the customer and say, do you want this? Let's survey. You help us tell us what you want. And then guess what? We'll help build it, but you're going to pay us 50% of what it's going to cost when it's done. You give us feedback, you become the case studies, and then you don't owe any money, and you've already got the momentum of people utilizing it. That's making money on the buy. That's win then play. We can use it in business, we can use it in real estate, and we can use it in investing if we have knowledge. Too many people are gambling and calling it investing. They're out there investing, hoping that it's going to work out, hearing that everybody else is doing it. I got to get in cryptocurrency. Oh, I got to get in this type of real estate, but they don't have the expertise. So they don't know when to exit. They don't know if it's the right time to buy. You know, and they'll look and say, well, look, Warren Buffett makes a lot of money in the stock market. Really? Warren Buffett buys companies. He's got enough money that he buys the company and employs his management philosophy throughout that. And all of a sudden, he has a degree of control over the profitability versus someone who just buys a share. And I guess they can have one meaningless vote, but it doesn't mean enough to influence that company. So he can make money on the buy, maybe because of a parallel company he has that company can support. And there's that horizontal integration. You know, we've got a friend, Mike, that he went and bought a company because he knew how to list manage, and all of a sudden he turned that into profitability from day one. That's making money on the buy.
All right, so you said there's 4. So
Yeah.
make money on the buy. What's the next one?
Second one is cash flow investing. We've been trained, taught, and educated that everything's about accumulation. It's about long haul. It's about sacrifice. It's about scrimping, saving, delaying and deferring. Instead of that, look at cash flow from day one. How can you become a cash flow investor that you get recurring revenue? Recurring revenue can cover your personal expenses because here's the deal. Everybody's saving 10% of their money if they're doing what they're supposed to. And then they try to earn 10% on that. But what ends up happening is they don't earn 10%. It's hard to save the 10%, and then they're not where they want to be. What if you have enough cash flow coming in to cover your basic life expenses, either from assets like real estate or businesses, or even your own business and entrepreneurial income inside of it? That's the income that comes in even if you don't show up. So I'm not talking about when you're in the mix of things. I'm talking about when there's scale and leverage there. When that covers the basic expenses, 100% of your active income can be reinvested. You have a 10 times advantage over anyone else in that situation. So if we start shifting towards cash flow, number one, we're alarmed when things don't work out, where if we're in accumulation, we might find out when it's too late that it's not working out. It's not on track. There isn't good enough pacing. It's declining. So cash flow becomes that indicator. The third one is efficiency. That was the 4 I's. IRS, interest, investments, and insurance. It's plugging the leaks and keeping more of what you make. And the fourth one is actually that state when you create economic independence. You've already won the game. Choose how you want to play from there. You're not forced to make any decisions. You don't have to go to work to make the ends meet or to pay the bills. So you get to say, what is your life going to be about? What impact do you want to make? What's your vision? Because remember I mentioned activity and consumption is the detriment for so many people in Play to Win, right? They're not thinking about vision. Vision is when we break through the norms, and creation is the highest form of reality, and it's the highest compensated thing out there. Vision is the rarest commodity. And to me, vision is when we talk about something so compelling, but it's outside of our reach. We don't have the bandwidth. We don't have the money, maybe. It's bringing maybe even a little bit of fear where we're like, I don't know how to accomplish it. But if it's inspiring enough to others, we now have created a miraculous space where people can come and support what we're up to. And when people can get beyond their own capabilities, that they can enroll other people in the capabilities and in bringing this forth, that is where real wealth is built. That's the breakthrough. Wealth breakthrough is vision. There's no greater way to earn money than vision because dollars follow vision. And vision is the most scalable, leverageable thing that exists in the world. When everybody else is trying to borrow money to leverage, may or may not work for a lot of people. But where the ultimate leverage is in two forms. Our mental capital, which is our ideas, knowledge, wisdom, tools, strategies, and relationship capital. People, networks, organizations, individuals, customers, and the bridge between those is business. So how do we take our mental capital to serve people? And when we can leverage that because we've created a big enough picture that isn't just about paying the bills, that isn't just so selfish, it's only about us, which retirement is such a low barrier and a low mark. The icons, I've heard you say it, the icons never retire. Why? Because their vision and purpose is big enough to compel them forward until the day that they die, and they typically have, if they take care of their health along the way, longevity. Right? So I really look at vision as the ultimate breakthrough. When we escape what society says success is, in Win Then Play, it's when we've created a vision worthy of our life. When we've discovered our own soul purpose, our values, our abilities, our passions, and when we combine that for something worthy of getting up for every single day, if that vision's bigger than our problems, we find a way. If that vision's compelling enough, other people come and be part of it. And that's why the rich get richer, is because rich people have vision and poor people have work ethic.
So, well, and without a vision, the people perish, as the old adage goes.
And I'm not yelling at you, man.
No, I know. You're just passionate. I know. You're just excited. I get it.
It's the Italian side of it.
So one of the things that I think bears some investigation, because a lot of times when we talk to people who are, hey, you're doing a thing on wealth and on wealth breakthrough. Yeah, they've got this desire to be wealthy. Given your experience, how do you define wealth?
See, being rich means having money. But being wealthy, to me, comes in 5 tracks. And in these tracks, we're not looking for balance, because balance is impossible. People are out of balance all the time. When you're in flow, you're out of balance, and flow is a great thing. And I think there's a lot of guilt and shame when people are trying to be perfectly balanced. What we're looking for is depth and harmony. And those 5 things, it begins with money. Money's part of our wealth. If you don't have money, you better be in a loincloth out in the woods with a bow and arrow. Otherwise, it's going to be a tough living, right? So money's important. And people that say that it's not important usually don't have much of it. Right. The second thing is purpose. If we spent the same amount of time looking at our purpose on a daily basis as we do managing our finances as a society, life would get exponentially better because purpose drives money. When money's the beginning thing, like I remember going to school and it said in my textbook, the purpose of business is profit. And I looked at it this way. The responsibility of business is profit. The purpose is why you're doing what you're doing.
Right.
And if your why's not compelling enough, profit won't see it through during difficult times.
Right.
So purpose is so instrumental because that's the vision that can help us reach. And that vision and purpose is the container in which we live, the actions in which we take. Then the third one is mindset. Because you could have all the money in the world, but if you have a poor mindset, you'll be afraid of losing that money every day. You'll destroy relationships. You'll lose sleep. You'll have stress. You'll die early. Mindset is essential. It is part of wealth, absolutely. Then there's health. Health is part of wealth. If you don't have your health, you'd probably spend every last dollar you had to get that health back. There's that proverb that says, hey, if you have your health, you could have thousands of dreams, but if you don't have it, you're probably gonna have one, right? You're just trying to get that back. And there's a lot of people that sacrifice their health in the name of riches, and then they end up finding out that those riches slip through the cracks just trying to get their health back. And then finally is social. So social wealth means relaxation, recreation, and rejuvenation. You are your greatest asset, not a stock, not a bond, not some piece of real estate. So what are you doing to take care of yourself and enjoy life along the way? In Win Then Play, we celebrate the wins. We consider quality of life. Money alone is a misleading benchmark because there's always someone with more. And no matter how much you have, you could live in Zimbabwe where it gets deflated to nothing and it's not worth anything. The ultimate wealth is that you have relationships that are rich, that you have experiences that you enjoy, and that you have quality of life so that you actually can live a long period of time. So it's money, it's purpose, it's mindset, it's health, and its social aspect. That's wealth. And what I mean by depth and harmony, depth is presence. Depth just means it's not about quantity all the time, it's about quality. It means that you are present when you're in what you're doing. And then harmony is that you're deliberate and intentional about what you do. So there's times when I'm writing a book, I'm not in balance. I'm writing, I'm not seeing my family as much. But then I'm taking 2 months and spending time in Italy later on because I don't believe in retirement. I'm retiring along the way by having experiences, and I'm retiring that concept because my purpose is greater than just the selfish notion of me living and not having to work anymore, right? Because I feel like I have more to contribute to the world, and I think everyone does. But the people that have to retire, like my dad that was a coal miner, retire from that shit. But you don't want to retire from something that actually calls to who you are in that vision.
I've heard you describe people you've worked with before that are they have a lot of money.
Right.
They're rich, I guess, in that respect, but they don't live wealthy.
Right.
What do you mean by that?
These are the people that they're the broke millionaire. They're the miserable millionaire. You wouldn't know that they had the money because they've never spent any of their money. These are people like when I flew to Vegas to visit one of my friends. He picked me up, and I think the hubcap rolled up and hit someone at the, because he had such a jalopy vehicle. He's making a good 6-figure income, but his car didn't have air conditioning. Now, this is what that's like in Vegas in August. The windows are up, and you're not sure if it's a sauna, so you're so hot. So you roll down the window, then it's a blow dryer. Which pain do you want, right? I'm like, thank God we're going to get to his house soon. When we got there, he had it set on his thermostat at 82.
Oh my God.
I was like, bro, if I give you $5, can we just get that down in the 70s somewhere? See, there's plenty of money that's being compiled, but if it's never utilized, what good is it? And if it cripples a mindset to only be thinking about what we can save instead of how we produce, reductionist thinking actually helps us to avoid wealth because no one shrinks their way to wealth. Wealth is a game of expansion. It's a game of value creation at the core of it. How do we deliver value to others? And if we can deliver it to more people or we can more deeply impact the people we serve, the more wealth we're going to have, especially if that's aligned with what I would call our sole purpose or if that's aligned with our vision and purpose.
So you certainly advocate living within your means, but people take that to varying extremes maybe that you disagree with. So how would you define living within your means?
My immature mind early on in my life believed living within my means was cutting things out and eliminating. Like when I was first getting married, my father-in-law says, if you guys want to live in the basement, you're free to live there, rent free. So I tell my wife, I'm like, hey, we should move in your parents' basement. She goes, I guess you don't care about having sex. I was like, okay, maybe we should have a little bit better budget than that. But see, you could save yourself into misery, right? Yeah. And that's kind of living within your means as people think about cutting. And cutting isn't going to get you wealthy.
Right.
There's intelligent cutting, and then there's the mindset that you only focus on that.
Right.
So the second thing is to be more efficient within your means. This is to plug the leaks. This is the 4 I's: IRS, interest, investments, and insurance. We want to design that right. But the last one is the game changer. And this will separate everyone. It's to expand your means. When I wrote 5-Day Weekend, I had this framework, which is first off, let's help you to make more money. You got to be in the right mindset to expand and grow and make more money. Then second, when you make that money, let's help you keep more of the money that you make. Not by budgeting, but by intelligence. Then the third thing was now it's time to grow your money. See, and when I was a kid, I wanted to grow the money before I did anything else. Like I wanted to skip these steps and make my money make money, even if it was only $700 or $5,000. And then finally, the fourth thing is you got to invest back into yourself no matter how far along you are. You've got to put your ego in check and be infinitely curious. Curiosity is key for wealth because if we feel we've arrived at any time, that's a dangerous place to be. Right. We're at a faster, more rapidly changing world than ever. In the next 7 years, more of the S&P 500 will go out of business than the last 70.
Wow.
That's because small technology allows people to do big things, and you don't have to have massive amounts of money or capital. You just have to be able to create value, and we've seen that over and over because even in the last decade, we've seen a lot of those companies didn't make it. So in that, let's go to the second piece of how to be more efficient within your means. So the first one is the IRS. And there's a framework to save. And look, it doesn't matter which country you live in. I just like to keep it 4 I's. I'll maybe now, because we're talking to the world here, say it's to dot the I's and cross the T's, right? So then we have 3 I's and 1 T, and that's tax.
Right.
And this framework works no matter where you are. There's 3 parts to it. Now, there's 2 mistakes people make around tax all the time, and it destroys wealth. One is to defer tax. Deferring and delaying tax is detrimental from a standpoint of I don't know anyone that trusts the government.
Right.
Do you think they're going to lower taxes in the future? I mean, they're addicted to their consumption, and the way that they handle that consumption is either by borrowing or by taxing to cover what they've borrowed.
Right.
So I think that with the US being 23 trillion in debt, I don't really trust that they're going to lower taxes in the future. And if you defer those taxes, you have a few things working against you. One, inflation. Inflation means in the future you have to have more money to buy the same number of things that you buy today. That means you're going to be pushed into a higher tax bracket because you have to have more money, right? Just to maintain lifestyle. The second thing is because the government's addiction to spending, they might have to raise taxes in the future. And if you have a financial planner tell you you'll be in a lower tax bracket in the future because you don't need as much money to live on, they're planning for you to fail. You should run.
Yeah.
Okay, the second thing is, and I see this far too often, people spend $1 to save 37 cents. I did this early on. I bought a car because you could do a Section 179, which meant if it was over 5,500 pounds, you got to write it all off in that year that you bought it. So it's cool. I can write that off. I pay less in tax. But now I have a depreciating asset that I didn't even want.
Yeah, saying you didn't need the car. Yeah.
Right. So I spent money. I didn't make money. Right? It's like someone going, oh, it's a 50% sell, buying something I didn't want or need. Right? Yeah, you just lost money on what you bought if you didn't want or need it. So what to do instead is, first thing is you got to build the right team. Second thing is you maximize your deductions. And third thing is the most powerful, you reclassify your income. You got to have the team. And this is the hardest thing, even though it's the easiest thing to understand. You just got to have data. Whether you're using an app to get your data or whether you hire a bookkeeper, a CFO, or a controller, timely data is essential. If you get your data to your accountant after the year's over, you overpaid on your taxes. So you've got to meet at least quarterly with your team. You got to have the right data to have the meeting. And the other two people on the team are going to be a tax strategist and an attorney. Most people miss the attorney, and that's where the biggest tax advantages are. A tax strategist might be a CPA in America, but it might not be. Some CPAs are more historians, telling you what you owe based upon what you earned, not how you navigate the tax system. Because sure, we have a few hundred pages of why we have to pay taxes, but then we have thousands of pages of why we don't, if you know how to navigate it properly. So this is the three people. You got the controller, you've got the tax strategist, and then you've got the attorney. And if you own commercial property, you add an engineer. An engineer can do something called a cost segregation study that anyone that owns commercial property, which is greater than a fourplex or a commercial building, they can get accelerated depreciation. One of the reasons why Trump pays so little in taxes is because of that feature right there. So now you want to meet with these people every quarter. And your job is to think outside the box, to be a brainstormer. Their job is to think inside the box and what the rules and regulations are. When I have these meetings, I go, hey, I just bought a side-by-side Can-Am, right? These are like, you've seen it, the turbocharged golf carts going 100 miles an hour on the dirt roads. They're the price of a car.
Right.
So I start the meeting by saying, can I write that off? And they say no. And I go, wait, it's in the intro to my speaker video because I just filmed me and my family in it. Everyone that comes and does my podcast will be able to write in it. Here's the liability waivers showing that they can write in that. It's going to be in other videos, including the intro and outro of the podcast. And by the end of the conversation, we're going to write 50% of that thing off.
And this is what's fascinating because I think what you're saying, and I agree with it, is that people over-delegate to these so-called experts.
And they're more Monday morning quarterbacks than quarterbacks.
Right. Yeah. They're looking backwards rather than saying we got to go score some points.
Wealth is built in proactivity. It's easy for all of us to be retroactive or reactive. It's easy.
Yeah.
But the people that are proactive are the visionaries. The people that are proactive have the riches. The people that just are busy and active and consuming, they get spoiled.
And this is a great example where you walked in and said, oh, can I write this off? And they're like, no. Yeah. And most people, I'm going to say 98 out of 100 times, are probably going to say, oh, okay, what's the next item on the agenda, as compared to you saying, wait a minute.
What if?
Not so fast.
What if? That's your friend. What if?
What if?
In what cases could it be written off? Would there be any situation where any organization could write this off? Right? And then I'm going to Italy. I'd like to write that off. And then they laugh and I go, well, I think I need to do my annual corporate compliance meetings. And they're like, oh yeah, I think better with wine in Italy than I do in my home in Utah. And then they laugh, but then by the end of that, I think it was 55% of that trip I got to write off. I filmed while I was out there. I got footage of where my great-grandfather was from. I mean, we did certain things to help justify that. So you want to have these quarterly meetings, and then every 3 years you want to look back and see if you missed anything. So going back, maybe people have missed research and development. They've developed something on the internet. They've built an app. They've improved a software system. They can get credits for that in the United States, for example. Or I had to have research to write my books, and that research allowed me to get domestic production credits of $28,000 one year, $31,000 another year, $32,000. I was able to go back. That's money that I'd overpaid. So every 3 years, a different set of eyes. Every quarter, I have the meeting. It's a 20-minute to an hour meeting, depending on how many items, and here's how I run that meeting. The second column here we're talking about is deductions. So deductions, I just have 2 rules. Number 1, I say, does this expense relate to my business? And so this is now assuming people want to build wealth, and even if it's a side business, a business is a huge advantage, right? 83% of people that have side businesses want to make it a full-time gig. We're moving into that type of an economy, and 70% of people in America have a side business. But most of those are not set up to maximize tax savings. That'll be the reclassification strategy here in a minute. But all I do is I go, could this relate to my business? And if I'm uncertain, I just document it for that quarterly meeting, right? And if it does, then I make sure to get it reimbursed by the business, but I charge it to a personal credit card. That way, if I don't end up using it, it's not infringing upon my corporate veil.
Right.
What this means is if you're a corporation and you accidentally spend money out of the corporation on personal things, you don't have the liability protection you thought you had.
So even if when it comes and you allocate and you say, okay, the company paid for this, but then I took it as a distribution after the fact.
That would help, but it might not always hold up.
Okay, well.
I like it as clear as possible, but that would at least be an argument.
Okay.
What they're gonna do is, if you ever sued, they're gonna call that an alter ego. Alter ego. This isn't really a business. This is just, Patrick, or this is just Garrett.
Right.
So I like to just charge it, then I write it down, then I have those statements in front of me, and then when we have the meeting, I go, I bought this, what can I write off? And then we go through, some of it's a percentage we can write off. Sometimes I get a flat out no, but every now and again I get a flat out no, and I go, what type of companies could write this off? And my favorite was, I like to buy nice clothes sometimes, and I'd like to write those off. But the uniform code says, if I can wear them out there every day, it's not really a write-off. I said, but guys, Hollywood's buying normal clothes for their actors all the time. Are you telling me they don't write it off? They're like, well, they're a production company. I said, oh, so if I had a production company, which I have a TV studio, I have a podcasting studio, I have clothes that stay there pretty much all the time, could I write that off? And they're like, well, if it's a production company, yes. See, I'm here to brainstorm and challenge. They're here to keep me within the laws.
Right.
On that call, I could be as wild and crazy as I want because we're not filing anything.
Right.
Okay, and there's so many rules out there that people miss. The Augusta rule, where I can rent my house out for 14 days. I get to rent that to my business if I want, write it off in the business, but I don't have to claim it as personal income. Or I could pay my kids. I can pay my kids up to $12,000. That's tax deductible to the business, tax free to them, even though I control the accounts.
Slow down for the people who are writing. Okay, so let's get back to this Augusta rule.
Yeah.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. You're saying you could rent your house to your business for 14 days and you don't have to take it as income?
Right, so the Augusta rule is the nickname for it. And the way it came about is there was a senator out of Georgia who happened to own a home in Augusta. Now, that was his second home. So there was 14 days a year he could rent that out for a lot more than any other time of year. That's during the Masters.
Right.
So he wanted to rent it out. But he was frustrated they had to pay tax on that. So he just slipped that into one of the bills. And now that tax code got changed, that you can rent out your home. And that doesn't have to be to your business. It could be to anyone. You could Airbnb it for 14 days. You don't have to claim it as income.
Right.
Right? So it's just tax-free money. Or you get to write it off for the business and get to take it as a personal income, tax-free 14 days or less.
That's what I'm saying. So the business can expense it, but you can take it personally. You pay, well.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine there's some parameters around how much you can rent it for.
Right.
But as long as you're in line with what might be considered a market rent, in that case, if it's during the Masters golf tournament, you can.
That's the beauty.
Yeah.
Is the parameters are dictated by the demand.
Right.
So when the Super Bowl was in Atlanta, I had a bunch of clients in Atlanta. I called them all and I said, this is the time to host something at your house.
Right.
Go on Airbnb, see how much homes similar to that are renting for. And they were like, oh my gosh, it's astronomical. Sundance in Park City.
Which is
How much bigger rent is it during Sundance?
It's astronomical. As a matter of fact,
like tenfold, right?
at least some companies will come into town and rent people's stores and pay their whole year's rent for the 2 weeks.
Right. So we're looking for those unique opportunities at the time that we do it. It's all in documentation. Documentation is your friend. And I know there's going to be people that listen to this and they go, sounds risky, right? I'm here to tell you that I've been doing this for over 20 years now. And we haven't had audit issues because this is all legal and ethical things. And part of what I'm giving is very US-centric. But here's the deal. I've had people in Canada that have heard this platform that saved $100,000, this guy Yuri, because he's using the framework. It's a little bit different with the nuances, whether you're in Australia or the UK, but you can use having a team, meeting with them every quarter, asking them these kind of questions. that's how you're going to navigate the whole thing.
How much can you pay your kids a year?
$12,000 a year if you're in the U.S.
So you can pay them $12,000 a year. They don't have to pay tax on it.
Right? Yeah. And here's how you navigate that properly. You better have them do $12,000 worth of work.
Okay.
So early on, I missed these deductions because I didn't really know what could I justify these young kids of mine to do. I didn't realize I could have a model by putting on my website, and that's $2,500 a piece per year. I missed that, but that's a union standard.
Right.
Now I'm like, well, how much do I pay an MC at an event? What if I have my son introduce me before I went on stage? So I brought him out. He's 9 years old, introduces me to 1,000 people. He's fired up and stoked. The crowd's fired up and stoked. Then he signed books with me for 5.5 hours afterwards.
Wow.
Now, he didn't sign nearly as many books as me because he tried to write and it'd take forever, but he was fascinated. It was cool because What Would the Rockefellers Do? It's a legacy book, and there's my son, right? Or I had to take a red eye once to speak in Boston, so I brought the kids because I didn't want to torture my team with it, and they're handing out books, and they're there with me. Those are higher, dollar things than if I have them mow a lawn or if I have them file something. So you've got to document what they did. You can't just pay it with no documentation. Because some people are going to be afraid, like, well, am I going to get in trouble with the IRS? This is legal and ethical strategies. Absolutely not going to get in trouble with the IRS. Amendment, the IRS is going to say yes or no whether or not they approve that amendment based upon what you send them. So you've got to have the right tax team.
So what's the next thing we should consider?
Well, reclassification is the game changer. So some people do a good job maximizing their deductions. Almost no one does good with reclassification. There's 4 ways to reclassify. 1, you take active income and reclassify it to passive income for tax purposes. I'll give some examples. 2, you take ordinary income and make it a capital gain. Capital gain could be 0%, 15%, or 20%, and the top tax bracket in the U.S. is 37.5%, so you can see the savings there. Number 3, tax-free income, which is almost exclusive to capital gain assets like a business or a piece of real estate or a highly appreciated stock. And then tax arbitrage. Now, tax arbitrage sounds complicated, but it's this simple. If I spend $1 on something, I better get more than $1 back from the government. No more dollar for 37 cents.
Right.
It's $1 for $2. Okay? So let me give just an example or two in each area. Active to passive. You can set up a corporation. You can pay yourself a reasonable salary if you have employees. What is the test in your industry? I know you have a background of being a chiropractor, and we look at the reasonable salary for a chiropractor versus what Patrick Gentempo, the chiropractor, would get. 2 very different numbers, but as long as you're in the reasonable salary test, you can pay the rest in distributions. Distributions avoid self-employment tax, which is as high as 15.3%.
Right.
So you're just paying yourself 2 checks instead of 1, right? Or let's say that you own a building, and you could actually rent that building out to your business, charge yourself the highest possible rent based upon the comparables, and that's going to get you a passive income at 1099 instead of W-2.
Right.
That's going to save you that money as well. So ordinary income to capital gains. Let's say you do business internationally. You do, right? You
Yes.
guys do business
Sure.
internationally.
Sure.
You could actually run that business of anyone that buys these documentaries outside the United States through an international sales company, and anything that flows through that company is capital gains. So you've just reduced your taxation to capital gains.
It's automatic capital gains? How did I not know that?
Well, I wanted you to interview me, so if I keep giving you an insight every time you interview me, I keep being in everything that you do. So that's my secret
That's working.
sauce there. Yeah.
Okay.
Tax-free, there's several ways. Like, just to give a more obscure one, but that's completely tax-free, is called a 1202. A 1202 says if you have a C corporation that's at least 5 years old, but was started after like 1983, you could sell up to $10 million tax-free on a business and tax advantaged above $10 million. So I've only seen that happen once, but it's worth knowing about if you have a business that could fit that category. There's other things like a CAPS trust, which allows you to spread your taxes out after over 10 years or up to 20 years. There's something called a charitable trust, where you can actually donate your business to a charitable organization. When the business sells, it funds a trust that you get to be the first beneficiary of. The charity keeps whatever's left over when you die, which is estimated to be 10%. So you give the charity 10% rather than the government 20%. And by the way, you get a tax deduction for what they think you're going to leave behind at the charity. So not only do you not pay tax upon the sale,
You get
you
tax break.
tax break.
Wow.
That could be a 50% swing for people, right?
Wow.
So that's a few tax-free examples. And tax arbitrage, I'll just give 2 examples. One, I bought some artwork. You've seen the artwork before. I bought a big collection at a deep discount because I agreed to never sell it on the open market. And after 3 years, I started to donate it. When you donate after 3 years, it moves from book value to appraised value. And those museums get it appraised when I donate it, and I get a deduction for the full appraised value. So I spent $300,000. I got $2.2 million in tax deductions.
Wow.
So I got paid to own art. And then another thing is a conservation easement. Let's say, we have a mutual friend that had a lot of land out there in Colorado, close to Florissant.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, you have all this land. Are you ever going to develop it? He said no, but he had 30 1 acre lots,
Right.
and then a bunch of other acres. I said, if you do a conservation easement saying you're never going to develop it, you get that tax advantage over a century right now today. And so all of a sudden, you can get major tax advantage. In some cases, depending on the development rights, could be worth as much as what you paid for the property.
Wow.
People in Florida that own property where these turtles that, dig and everything, if they give that up in a conservation easement because of the preservation of an endangered species, it could be a high value. Or someone in West Texas owning land that they have a hard time selling but has a lot of sand that could be used for fracking. You get it appraised as if you were to develop it for fracking, and you might get a 6.5 or 7-to-1 tax deduction. So all of a sudden you're getting paid for the land in tax benefit rather than trying to sell it to someone that it's not developed yet. So those are just a couple tax arbitrage examples. So look, I know that this is a lot of information in a short period of time, but this is the bottom line. 3 by 3 by 3 by 3. The 3 columns, you want to have a team, 3 people on that team, right? You got the controller or bookkeeper, that could be someone very part-time. You've got the tax strategist, you've got the tax attorney, which is mostly reclassification. The tax strategist is mostly deduction. The second column is deduction. The third column is reclassification. Look back every 3 years, see if you missed something. Meet with them every single quarter, ask compelling questions, and the hardest part of this is finding the team.
Right.
If you find the game is won in win then play. The game is won a lot of times when you pick the teams.
Right.
You pick the right financial team, you've already won because they can help you navigate, like that family office. Like I saw when I was 22 years old, man, they have major, massive advantages because of what they could do that no one else gets a chance to do.
Wow. So let's say now that I'm earlier on.
Yeah.
I'm working, but I've saved 30 grand.
Yep.
And I want to have a wealth breakthrough. I want to start moving toward building financial freedom in my life. What would you recommend?
So the first thing I recommend is you got to set up a separate account. It could be a checking, savings, or money market, but we need a more elegant tracking system. What I find is people have insatiable appetites when money's sitting around, and businesses have an even more insatiable appetite in finding excuses to spend the money. So the separate account is a wealth capture account. It's a place where you're saying, this is my money that I'm going to automatically save, but then deliberately invest. And your first benchmark in that is you want to have at least 3 months set aside for personal expenses. That way, if you have a health issue, a family issue, a financial surprise, which we all are going to have those sometimes, you've got more staying power.
Right.
From there, I would look into cash flow banking. Now, cash flow banking is a Rockefeller method of how they've perpetuated wealth. My belief is, why not buy net worth and build cash flow? Most people only focus on building net worth and neglect cash flow.
Right.
So how do we do that? This is very interesting because this is something that happened in the 1950s with GE. GE decided they wanted to recruit the very best talent in the world. But to recruit that talent, they said, how do we do that so that we could be number 1 or number 2 in every category we're in? So what they decided is, we got to go recruit these executives that already have a job and offering them something their current organization can't. So they went and they recruited them and said, we'll give you a pension. Now, the way they funded the pension was the right way initially. They didn't use the stock market. They bought life insurance, corporate-owned life insurance. And here's what would happen. That would build cash value. That cash value would supplement the pension after the person retired, and the person would die, and the death benefit would come back tax-free to the corporation and give them between 6 and 7% tax-free after expenses, right? This got so big that Walmart got in trouble because they were even buying it on their greeters, and people were like, hey, you just profited from grandpa's death. So kind of got some negative press, but ultimately we can do this as individuals. We could buy cash value policy, but you've got to design it right. You've got to design it how the Rockefellers would design it, or really wealthy families, which is very cash heavy. So rather than getting 1% on your savings account or 2% if you're in an internet bank, what the banks do is they can take a third of their reserves and put it into cash value policies. Now these are cash heavy, very cash heavy from day one, that they can pull the money back out, but it doesn't get hit with tax. It's protected from liability and bankruptcy, right? It's available and accessible within 30 days of when it's first deposited, and they can usually get it within 72 hours upon request.
Right.
And if the market goes down, it does not go down. So rather than getting 1 to 2%, you're getting 4 or 5% tax advantaged. So now you've got a place to store this cash that you can then capitalize when other opportunities come along. And that's where you got to be patient and discover your investor DNA. Where can you invest where you have unique insight, unique knowledge, and unique ability, and then you look for making money on the buy. Or if you own a business, it might be putting money into the business to increase profits. Might be hiring someone, it might be putting a piece of equipment into place, it might be your own personal education, but the place that you never get to stop investing is into yourself and into your knowledge, into your network and into your mentors. That makes the biggest difference because we all face scarcity at sometimes. We all face cash crunches. We all face changing economies, and we don't want scarcity thinking to ever take over and make high emotion create poor financial decisions.
Right.
So you want that outside perspective. And then from there, I think Investor DNA is where we really discover our core competencies, our core values, our core drivers so that we're interested in it. And then we focus instead of diversify. Diversification is admission of ignorance. I don't know what's going to work. Let me spread myself thin. Diversification is a play not to lose strategy that if you're really affluent makes sense because you have more money than you can allocate to the things that you know maybe, right? So it's more of a stability thing. But as a growth strategy, it's a horrifically bad choice, especially if it's you're spreading yourself thin in things you don't know.
You're playing defense.
Right. Andrew Carnegie said he put all of his eggs in one basket and watched it like a hawk. And so if you build your foundation, you have your liquidity, you have your cash flow bank, now you have permission to capitalize on the right opportunities. So for me, there's only a few places I invest. I invest in my businesses, which I have 3 businesses that I look to expand. I like it because it's 3-dimensional. Number 1, the more cash flow that can come in without my involvement, the more equity I create, and I actually get to hear from the people that I serve. I get hugs sometimes, I get gifts. My mutual fund never gave me that. It gave me a piece of paper in the mail to tell me why I just lost money. So that's a very different thing. Or business acquisition when the economy turns. That's for me. For other people, that investment might be real estate, but only if you know real estate. And you're not going to know everything if you're just getting started. Is it going to be fix and flip for you? Is it going to be, cash flow real estate on rentals? Is it going to be commercial? Get really, really good at one thing and look to make money on the buy. 30 grand might not be a ton of money, but it can get you started. Invest in your education first, in your infrastructure second, and then third, capitalize on opportunities when they arise, but don't go prematurely allocate it, right?
So is there a level of patience here? So if
Absolutely.
we got the $30,000, like I got to go do something with it,
Right.
as compared to saying, let me educate myself really well about something before I start jumping into it.
If you want to be wealthy.
Yeah.
Wealth requires that patience. It doesn't mean we sit around and wait for things to happen to us. It means we invest in our knowledge so we're prepared when the opportunity comes.
So let's say that, okay, take that to the next level. I get that. I don't know what I might have passion about yet. I want to survey the landscape a little bit, and maybe something will start to pop out to me saying, oh, you know what, that really captures my interest.
Right.
How would you recommend starting down a path saying, I want to see maybe where I have competency or what I might have passion around if I don't know what that is right now?
Well, look, courses help, right? What they're watching here with Wealth Breakthroughs help because you get exposed to a lot of things, right? In my book, 5-Day Weekend, we wrote about a ton of different types of investments, most of which I would never touch because they would bore me.
Right.
So early on, I wanted to make more money as an investor than an educator. So I had over 100 real estate properties at one time, and you know what? I didn't like it. I didn't like deferred maintenance issues. I didn't like dealing with property managers. I didn't like dealing with financing and banks. And so it was more drudgery. It was supposed to be passive income, but it was very active. So I said, why am I in real estate and real property when I can be in intellectual property? I like creating content. I like writing books. I like being on video. I love interviewing. I love being interviewed. This is something I'm passionate about. And I didn't discover that early on. I discovered that more in like 2007, right? So I had almost 9 years of being an investor, and I invested in 2 IPOs. I invested in a hard money lending fund that I started and initiated with 2 other partners, which was a nightmare of the amount of work. And all these things derailed and distracted me because I thought, based upon the books I had read, that real estate was the only place to put your money. And for the right person, if you're going to treat it like a business, it can be a good place to put your money. But for 70% of people out there that are just starting, it's a horrific place to put your money because you're not ready. You don't understand. You don't know. So you've got to invest in that education. You've got to be exposed to things and see if you really are intrigued. If you're interested, what are you reading about? Like, we've got people, because of you, that are so intelligent in health, they invest in health-related companies.
Right.
I invest in financial and intellectual property-related companies. So, that's really the places to look. But first, plug the leaks. And probably the first place to invest is in the team because you've got to have the advocates, people that do due diligence, people that save you a bunch of cash, and people that got your back to tell you when you're not thinking straight. Because I put on rose-colored glasses before. I'm ready to make that investment. I'm trying to do due diligence, but I'm just looking for all the evidence that confirms my bias, right? Where when I have other people like Norm and Ryan and Andrew, who are my due diligence team, they don't have that same attachment, and they can prevent me from making those missteps or mistakes, or at least making sure I have better collateral, that I have better protection, or that I'm negotiating at a different level.
Well, as always, Garrett, it feels like we're just getting started, but boy, that's a lot of great information. Really appreciate you coming and sharing it, and I know that this segment is something that's probably got to be watched a few times. A lot of takeaway value, so I appreciate you not showing up with fluff, but showing up with some real value that people can put to work. So thanks you
for the work you're doing, and appreciate the friendship.
Thank you.
James Altucher and Garrett Gunderson just gave a masterclass on unconventional thinking and how it can lead to life-changing results. To land your own wealth breakthrough, you need to have a mindset that says challenging conventional wisdom is a way of life, and the conviction to follow up that mindset with concrete action that gets you off the hamster wheel of money and puts you in a position of ultimate freedom and control. And we're just getting started. Interview after interview, we talk to 40 wealth experts in all. Now's your chance to own it all, see every interview, and get updates all year long from the experts we've collected to bring you Wealth Breakthroughs. Plus, we have a variety of packages available to get the entire Wealth Breakthrough series in your hands. This is an epic chance for you to change wealth in your life. Take advantage of it right now. Buy Wealth Breakthroughs in its entirety today and get a jump on taking control of money in your life forever. You can click the link you see below this player to review all the bonuses and package options we have lined up for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for episode 5. Take care.
The attack surface for hackers is growing explosively. This is a crisis. The blockchain is a new architecture for the internet on which you can build all the applications you want and have dependable outcomes. And now we have the alternative to the gold standard. Cryptocurrencies are the solution to that. One great technological movement addresses both the central problems of world economy, the collapse of internet security and the collapse of money.
Everybody's process is different. So you have to find something that really works for you, because if you can't stick with it and do it, then you're gonna fail.
Right.
You have to believe in what you're doing and really research it and figure it out. You have to be paying attention to price. If you're going to be trading stocks for the short term, you can't be fixated on things like news coverage or what's happening in politics or what this company is expecting for earnings or any of that stuff. None of that really matters. What matters is buyers and sellers and where those inflection points set up. People always are worried about markets that are going down. Oh, we're going to have a bear market or a big correction. I'm not so much worried about those. I don't like choppy markets. It's a lot more fun to trade markets that are breaking out to the upside.
I think any kind of 2020 prediction you might have read at the end of 2019, December, pretty much got thrown out the window really quickly with what's been going on this year. Of course, at its foundation, it's a health problem, but the economic repercussions of dealing with it have been pretty incredible. We're never going back to the old normal. There's going to be a new normal. And that does present challenges, but it also presents a lot of opportunities. There's trends that are on the upside that were already there, technology trends that are being accelerated by all this. Telehealth, work from home, study from home. Their stocks have done very well because of that.